Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dangs.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
All right, welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War, and specifically the first ever Battles of the American Civil War, Behind the Battles. I don't know, there was nothing else really to call it.
Something like that.
Biographies, profiles, I don't know. You do what the graphic's going to say Behind the Battle, so
Sure.
that's what it's going to be. If you guys are new, we just finished up the whole entirety of the Civil War, battle by battle.
And we did not skip one that wasn't recorded as an official battle. I'm sure there's many more that
Well, we did
we could have done.
every battle recognized by the American Battlefield
Right.
Institution or whatever. But 300 and something battles. It took us 2.5 years to finish the podcast. So we did it from the very first to the very last. And now we're kind of behind the battles doing the life profiles of some of the most famous figures.
What led everybody to this point in history?
Basically, yeah.
1861 at Fort Sumter.
How do you know? We got to start it off with America's favorite president, Abe Lincoln. There are going to be 4 parts of Abraham Lincoln because this guy, everybody wrote about everything he did. Yeah, there's going to be 4 parts of him. We're going to do his early life leading up into getting into politics, and then we're going to do the second part is going to be him, his early years as a politician. The third part is going to be his run for presidency and then covering the election, and then obviously the fourth part is going to be. The second part is that the election, him first getting elected. The third part is going to be his presidency, and then the fourth part is obviously going to be his assassination. So,
His re-election and then assassination.
well, yeah, something like that. So yeah, and then after this, we'll do.
Isn't that crazy that they assassinate him right after he got elected a second term because they knew his vice president was going to be president? They would have done it before. Do you think Andrew Johnson would have won the presidency? I don't think so.
Well, we can get to that and the assassination one because there's obviously conspiracy theories out there that Johnson was involved, just like the other Johnson with Kennedy. So
Yeah, that's definitely true.
yeah.
CIA records prove it.
Oh, there was no CIA in Abe's time, so
Not Abe's time.
after Abe, we'll move on from person to person. Any person we can get a notable biography on, we're covering that was involved in the Civil War, plus notable events like shipwrecks. We'll cover some prisons that a lot of people died in due to sanitary issues and whatnot, and lots of stuff. So this podcast is far from over. If you've been listening and if you're new to it, go back and listen to the actual battle episodes. If not, then here you are. This is how backstory this guy is. We're going to talk about his first known ancestors in America first. So,
Oh, wow.
His first known ancestor in America was Samuel Lincoln, who migrated from Hingham, England to Hingham, Massachusetts, 1637.
Oh, wow. He decided to go to his namesake, huh?
Yeah, it's probably...
That's cool.
They left Hingham to form a Hingham. Well, Samuel's son, Mordecai. That's a very 1600 name.
That's a very Amish name nowadays.
Right. Well, Lincoln did look a little Amish.
It's true.
His son
In
Mordecai,
Massachusetts.
he remained in Massachusetts, but Samuel's grandson, who was also named Mordecai, began the family's western migration.
Oh.
John Lincoln, Samuel's great-grandson, continued the westward journey. Born in New Jersey, John moved to Pennsylvania, then brought his family to Virginia, not exactly west, but
Right.
John's son, Captain Abraham Lincoln, who earned that rank for service in the Virginia militia, was the future president's paternal grandfather and namesake.
Fantastic.
Born in Berks County, Pennsylvania, more Amish connections there.
Yeah.
He moved with his father and other family members to Virginia's Shenandoah Valley sometime before 1768.
Look at that. The family, they settled near Linville Creek in Augusta County, now Rockingham County, Virginia. Captain Lincoln, he bought a total of 452 acres in Rockingham County. That's a lot, including some of his father's property before the family moved to Kentucky. Thomas Lincoln, the future president's father, was born in Virginia, January 1778, and moved west. He was one of the first natural-born citizens, huh? Fantastic.
Well, 2 years. I'm sure there was a lot between 76 and 78.
Right. And then they moved west to Jefferson County, Kentucky, with his father, mother, and siblings. They did that around 1782. He was about 5 years old. May 1786, the age of 42, Captain Abraham Lincoln was killed in an Indian ambush while working his fields in Kentucky. Oh, that's the start of the Lincoln curse.
Oh, wow. Well, 8-year-old Thomas, he witnessed his father's murder and might have ended up a victim if his brother Mordecai had not shot the attacker. After Captain Lincoln's death, Thomas's mother, Bathsheba Lincoln, she moved to Washington County, Kentucky, while Thomas worked at odd jobs in several Kentucky locations. Thomas also spent a year working in Tennessee before finally settling with members of his family in Hardin County, Kentucky in the early 1800s.
All right. So, okay, we got the Kentucky roots down and Pennsylvania roots and Massachusetts roots.
Right.
Virginia. The identity of Lincoln's maternal grandfather is unclear. Conversation with William Herndon, Lincoln's law partner and one of his biographers. The president implied that his grandfather was a Virginia planter or a large farmer, but he did not identify him at all.
Oh, so you can read between the lines there and say his grandfather probably owned a plantation with many, many slaves.
Lincoln felt that it was from his aristocratic grandfather that he had inherited his power of analysis, his logic, his mental activity, his ambition, and all the qualities that distinguished him from the other members and descendants of the Hanks family.
That's his maternal side's name.
Supposedly.
Right. Lincoln's maternal grandmother, Lucy Hanks, she may have migrated to Kentucky with her daughter, Nancy. There was a debate over whether Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was born out of wedlock. I mean, okay. Mitochondrial DNA tests of descendants of Lucy Hanks have shown this to be true, though. Who cares?
Right.
Nancy resided with Rachel Shipley Berry and her husband, Richard Berry Sr. in Washington County, Kentucky. She's believed to have remained with the Berry family after her mother's marriage to Henry Sparrow, which took place several years after the women arrived in Kentucky.
So that's Lincoln's maternal grandmother.
Right.
The Berry home was about 1.5 miles from the home of Thomas Lincoln's mother. The families were neighbors for 17 years. Mm-hmm. During this very time that Thomas met Nancy. Thomas Lincoln, Nancy Hanks married 12th of June, 1806. They did that at the Beach Fork Settlement, Washington County, Kentucky. The Lincolns moved to Elizabethtown, Kentucky following their marriage.
All right, and here's where the rumors start to fly, because biographers have rejected numerous rumors, they say, about Lincoln's paternity. According to historian William E. Barton, one of these rumors began circulating in 1861 in various forums in several sections of the South, of course. Right. And they say that Lincoln's biological father was Abraham Enlow, who was a resident of Rutherford County, North Carolina, who died in that same year. However, Barton dismissed the rumors as false from beginning to end. How do you know?
Right.
Enlow publicly denied his connection to Lincoln, but is reported to have privately confirmed it, though. Oh, so Lincoln's a little bastard child? No. Well, it gets a little more dicey.
Right. The Bostic Lincoln Center in Bostic, North Carolina, also claims that Abraham Lincoln was born in Rutherford County, North Carolina, and argues the case that Nancy Hanks had a illegitimate child while she was working for the Enlow family. That makes sense.
Those illegitimate children.
Rumors of Lincoln's ethnic and racial heritage were also circulated, especially after he entered national politics. Citing Chauncey Burr's Catechism, which references a pamphlet by a Western author adducing evidence, quote unquote, David J. Jacobson has suggested that Lincoln was part Negro, but the claim is unproven. Lincoln also received mail that called him a Negro and a mulatto.
Oh. Well, during his later years, Lincoln was reluctant to discuss his origins. He viewed himself as a self-made man and may have also found it difficult to confront the untimely deaths of his mother and sister.
Right. I mean, what's the matter?
However, around the time of his nomination as candidate for president, he provided 2 brief biographical sketches in response to 2 inquiries that provide a glimpse of youth in Kentucky and Indiana.
No.
One request for a campaign biography came from his friend and fellow Illinois Republican Jesse Fell. That came in 1859, and the other request came from John Locke Scripps, who was a journalist for the Chicago Press and Tribune.
In Lincoln's response to Scripps, he summed up his early life in a quote from Thomas Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard. He said this, "The short and simple annals of the poor." That's what Lincoln said.
Okay.
Additional details of Lincoln's early life appeared after his death in 1865. William Herndon began collecting letters and interviews from Lincoln's friends, family, acquaintances. Herndon published his collected materials in Herndon's Lincoln, The True Story of a Great Life. He did that in 1889. Although Herndon's work is often challenged, as everything is,
right.
Historian David Herbert Donald,
Can't have 3 first names. Come on.
He argues that he can have 3 first names.
And I do.
He says they have largely shaped current beliefs about Lincoln's early life in Kentucky, Indiana, and his early days in Illinois.
All right, well, now that's out of the way. Let's get to Lincoln. Okay?
Let's get to the facts.
Right. February 10th, 1807, Sarah Lincoln was born. December 1808, Thomas, Nancy, and their daughter, Sarah. They moved from Elizabethtown to the Sinkin Spring Farm on Nolan Creek near Hodgins Mill in Hardin County, Kentucky.
Oh.
It's now part of the Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Historical Park. Abraham, he was born at the farm 2 months after the move in February on February 12th, 1809.
Due to a land title dispute, family lived at the farm for only 2 years before being forced to move. Thomas continued
2 more years.
Right, 2 more years after they moved in. Thomas, he continued legal action in court, but lost the case in August of 1816. Kentucky's survey methods, which used a system of mates and bounds to identify and describe land descriptions, proved to be unreliable when the natural features of the land changed. Right. This issue, compounded by confusion over previous land grants and purchase agreements, caused continual legal disputes over land ownership in Kentucky for years to come.
Gotta get your shit together, Kentucky.
Summer of 1811, family relocated to Knob Creek Farm, now a part of Abraham Lincoln's Birthplace National Historical Park, 8 miles to the north.
That's not too bad. Now, situated in a valley of the Roland Fork River, it had some of the best farmland in the area. Good for you then.
Right.
Lincoln's earliest recollections of his boyhood are from this farm. A son, Thomas Lincoln Jr., or Tommy, he was born in either 1812 or 1813, but died 3 days later. That's a Lincoln family trait, huh?
Right.
1815, a claimant in another land dispute sought to eject the Lincoln family from the Knob Creek farm.
Oh, my goodness.
Years later, after Lincoln became a national political figure, reporters and storytellers often exaggerated his family's poverty and the obscurity of his birth. Lincoln's family circumstances were not unusual for pioneer families at that time. Right? Everybody was struggling.
Right.
Freaking 1812.
Right, and you're now in the Midwest where it is not even sparsely populated.
Right.
Of the 816 and a half acres that Thomas held in Kentucky, he lost all but 200 acres in land disputes. That's good.
208 acres.
That's plenty. Shit.
By 1816, Thomas was frustrated over the lack of security provided by Kentucky courts. He sold the remaining land he held in Kentucky in 1814 and began planning to move to Indiana, where the land survey process was more reliable and the ability for an individual to retain land titles was more secure.
Right. Because in Kentucky, they're just handing land titles off to anybody. You just better hope nobody comes back.
Come and settle here. In 1860, Lincoln stated that the family's move to Indiana in 1816 was partly on account of slavery, but chiefly on the account of the difficulty in land titles in Kentucky. No, it was 100% because of the land titles in Kentucky.
You are not kidding. Historians, they support Lincoln's assertion that the 2 major reasons for the family's migration to Indiana were most likely due to the problem with securing land titles in Kentucky, and there is a small issue of owning people. In the Indiana Territory, once a part of the old Northwest Territory, the federal government owned the territorial land, which had been surveyed into sections to make it easier to describe in land claims.
Oh, no shit.
As a result, the survey method used in Indiana caused fewer ownership problems. Should be no ownership problems. And it helped Indiana attract new settlers.
I don't know why they weren't doing this in the first place in every state, because at this time, New York City's mapped out into like literal perfect squares over their blocks and streets and shit. Like they know how to map land.
Right. As a result, the survey method used in Indiana caused fewer ownership problems and helped Indiana attract new settlers. In addition, when Indiana became a state in December of 1816, the state constitution prohibited slavery as well as involuntary servitude. Although slaves with earlier indentures still resided within the state, illegal slavery ended within the first decade of statehood. Lincoln, he spent 14 of his formative years, or roughly 1/4 of his life, from the age of 7 to 21, in Indiana. In December of 1816, Thomas and Nancy Lincoln, 9-year-old daughter Sarah, 7-year-old Abe, they moved to Indiana. They settled on land in an unbroken forest. Hey, nobody got a deed on this son bitch.
Right, we're clearing the land our damn self.
Yeah, they settled land on an unbroken forest in Hurricane Township, Perry County, Indiana. The Lincoln property lay on land ceded to the United States government as part of treaties with Piankishaw, the Shawnee, and the Delaware people. They did that in 1804.
1818, the Indiana General Assembly created Spencer County, Indiana. That was from portions of Warwick and Perry counties, which included the Lincoln Farm.
Oh.
The move to Indiana had been planned for at least several months. Thomas visited Indiana Territory in mid-1816. He wanted to go there to select a site, mark its claim, then returned to Kentucky and brought his family to Indiana sometime between November 11th and December 20th, 1816.
The worst time ever to travel in the Midwest.
Right.
It's insane.
Well, however, Thomas did not begin the formal process to purchase 160 acres of land until October 15th, 1817.
Son of a bitch.
When he filed a claim at the land office in Vincennes, Indiana, for property identified as the southwest quarter of Section 32, Township 4 South, Range 5 West.
Fantastic.
At least he's got that, huh?
More recent scholarship on Thomas Lincoln has revised previous characterizations of him as a shiftless drifter.
Well, they did move a lot.
And he had to. Documentary evidence suggests he was a typical pioneer farmer of his time, obviously. He moved where it was.
Right.
The move to Indiana established his family in a state that prohibited slavery. And they lived in an area that yielded timber to construct a cabin, adequate soil to grow crops that fed the Hills family, and water access to markets along the Ohio River.
He owned horses and livestock, paid taxes, acquired farmland, served the country when necessary, and maintained his standing in the local Baptist church.
He's a patriot.
Yeah. Despite some financial challenges, which involved relinquishing some acreage to pay for debts or to purchase other land, he obtained clear title to 80 acres of land in Spencer County June 5th, 1827.
Finally.
By 1830, before the family moved to Illinois, he's a drifter. Thomas had acquired 20 acres of land adjacent to his property, so now he's got a hundo.
Fantastic. Good for him, right? Lincoln, who became skilled with an axe, helped his father clear their Indiana land. Recalling his boyhood in Indiana, Lincoln remarked that from the time of his arrival in 1816, he was almost constantly handling that most useful instrument. Once the land had been cleared, the family raised hogs, and they also had corn on their farm, which was typical for Indiana settlers at this time. Thomas Lincoln also continued to work as a cabinet maker and a carpenter, which are both the same.
Had to do it all.
Cabinets are made of wood.
Right, but carpenters do everything.
With wood.
Well, right. But cabinet makers can only make cabinets, unless you want a house that looks like a cabinet.
That's a big ass front door.
Gotta have mules to open the damn thing. Within a year of the family's arrival in Indiana, Thomas had claimed title to 160 acres of Indiana land and paid $80, which was a quarter of its total purchase price of $320. The Lincolns and others, many of whom came from Kentucky, they settled in what became known as the Little Pigeon Creek community. By the time Lincoln reached age 13, 9 families with 49 children, holy moly, under the age of 17 were living within a mile of the Lincoln homestead. All that area, and you guys, it's like the guy that pees next to somebody in the urinal.
Right. They're like, dang, guys, come on.
Jeez.
Well, as it always happens in the Lincolns or around the Lincolns, tragedy struck the family. 5th of October, 1818. Nancy Lincoln died of milk sickness. This is an illness caused by drinking contaminated milk from cows who fed on Ageratina altissima, which is white snake root.
Yeah.
Ooh. Abraham, 9 years old. Sister Sarah, 11. After
9/11.
After Nancy's death, the household consisted of Thomas, age 40, Sarah, Abraham, and Dennis' friend Hanks. He was an orphan 19-year-old cousin of Nancy. Oh, poor Nancy. 1819, Thomas left Sarah, Abraham, and Dennis Hanks at the farm in Indiana and returned to Kentucky.
Says that I'm out.
So, yep, you're good now.
Yeah.
How old is that?
I mean, the dude's 19, so.
Yeah, 20 now.
Right. December 2nd, 1819, Lincoln's father married Sarah Bush Johnson. They call her Sally. She was a widow with 3 children from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. 10-year-old Abe quickly bonded with his new stepmother,
I bet.
who raised her 2 young stepchildren as her own. Good for you. Describing her in 1860, Lincoln remarked that she was a good and kind mother to him. Sally encouraged Lincoln's eagerness to learn and desire to read and shared her own collection of books with him. Years later, she compared Lincoln to her own son, John D. Johnston. She said both were good boys, but I must say, both now being dead, that Abe was the best boy I ever saw or ever expect to see. Damn, throw her own biological son out under the bus. Damn, what you do, Johnny?
They're both dead, so that's why she said that, huh?
And plus, Lincoln's the freaking president.
All right. There was an interview with William Herndon following Lincoln's death in 1865. Sally Lincoln described her son as dutiful and kind, especially to animals and children, and very cooperative and uncomplaining. Abe was.
Honest Abe.
She also remembered him as a moderate eater who was not picky about what he ate and enjoyed good health.
Good for you.
I don't think he'd be picky about what you ate back
Yeah,
then.
it's corn.
All right. Pioneer era Indiana. They were hunting and fishing. It was very typical. Thomas and Abraham did not appear to have enjoyed them.
Oh, well, never mind. They didn't eat fish.
Right. Lincoln later admitted that he had shot and killed only a single wild turkey in his whole entire life.
Oh.
Apparently, he opposed killing animals, even for food.
Oh, jeez.
but occasionally participated in bear hunts when the bears threatened settlers' farms and communities. Oh, only when they're doing bad, you must kill the bastards, huh?
I mean, 1828, another tragedy struck the Lincoln family.
Oh, man.
Lincoln's older sister, Sarah, who had been married to Aaron Grigsby since August 2nd, 1826, she unfortunately died in childbirth, January 20th, 1828.
A lot back then.
She was almost 21.
Man.
Little is known about Nancy Hanks Lincoln or Abraham's sister.
Well,
That's his mom.
right.
Neighbors who were interviewed by William Herndon agreed that they were intelligent, but gave contradictory descriptions of their physical appearances.
Oh,
Lincoln spoke very little about either woman.
right.
Herndon had to rely on testimony from a cousin, Dennis Hanks, to get an adequate description of Sarah. Those who knew Lincoln as a teenager later recalled his being deeply distraught by his sister's death
Oh, I bet.
and an active participant in a feud with the Grigsby family that erupted afterwards. They're having like some dispute over where she should be buried or some shit like that. Or the child, I would assume. The child didn't die.
Possibly looking for a diversion from the sorrow of his sister's death, 19-year-old distraught Abe Lincoln made a flatboat trip to New Orleans.
New Orleans.
In the spring
Going
of-
down to New
Right.
Orleans.
He did that in the spring of 1828. He had to get away from his trubs.
Yeah.
Lincoln and Allen Gentry, the son of James Gentry, owner of a local store near the Lincoln's family's homestead, they
He
began
was
their
friends with Montgomery.
right. They began their trip along the Ohio River at Gentry's Landing. Oh, look at that. That was near Rockport, Indiana. En route to Louisiana, Lincoln and Gentry, they were attacked by several African American men who attempted to take their cargo, but the two successfully defended their boat and repelled their attackers.
Look at them. Upon their arrival in New Orleans, they sold their cargo, which was owned by Gentry's father, then explored the city. With its considerable slave presence and active slave market, it's probable that Lincoln witnessed a slave auction, I'm sure.
Oh, I bet.
And it may have left an indelible impression on him. Congress outlawed the importation of slaves in 1808, but the slave trade, obviously.
Right.
How much of New Orleans Lincoln saw or experienced is open to speculation. Whether he actually witnessed a slave auction at the time or on a later trip to New Orleans, his first visit to the Deep South exposed him to new experiences, including the cultural diversity of New Orleans and a return trip to Indiana aboard a steamboat.
Beautiful. Yeah, he had to go down there and see the Deep South. Like, oh, shit. That'd buy you. 1858, when responding to a questionnaire sent to former members of Congress, Lincoln described his education as defective. 1860, shortly after his nomination for president, Lincoln apologized for and regretted his limited formal education.
He didn't go to school at all.
I'm sorry, guys. Lincoln was self-educated. His formal schooling was intermittent, the aggregate of which may have amounted to less than 12 months. Wow, altogether his whole 18 years. He never attended college, but Lincoln retained a lifelong interest in learning. September of 1865, interview with William Herndon. Lincoln's stepmother described Abraham as a studious boy who read constantly, listened intently to others, had a deep interest in learning. Lincoln continued reading as a means of self-improvement as an adult, studying English grammar in his early 20s, and he mastered Euclid after he became a member of Congress. What's Euclid? Greek?
Ancient Greek mathematician.
Greek math?
Oh, he's a mathematician guy. He's a geometer and a logician.
Wow.
He's the father of geometry.
Okay.
Dennis Hanks, cousin of Lincoln's mother, Nancy, he claimed that he gave Lincoln his first lesson in spelling, reading, and writing. He also boasted, I taught Abe to write with a buzzard's quill, which I killed with a rifle and having made a pen. Put Abe's hand in mine and moving his fingers by my hand to give him the idea of how to write.
Oh.
Hanks, who was 10 years older than Lincoln and only marginally literate, he may have helped Lincoln with his studies when he was very young, but Lincoln soon advances far beyond Hanks' abilities as a teacher.
I mean, it happens.
Well, I mean, the teacher always outperforms the master at some point.
The student has become the teacher. Abraham, age 6, and his sister Sarah began their education in Kentucky, where they attended a subscription school about 2 miles north of their home on Knob Creek. Classes were held only a few months during the year. In December of 1816, they arrived in Indiana. There were no schools. So Abraham and his sister continued their studies at home until the first school at Little Pigeon Creek was established about 1819. And it was about a mile and a quarter south of the Lincoln farm.
He had to march a mile and a quarter to school every day in the snow.
Right.
Well, in the 1820s, educational opportunities for pioneer children, including Lincoln, were meager.
Oh.
Parents of school-age children paid for the community schools and its instructors. Yeah. During Indiana's pioneer era, Lincoln's limited formal schooling was not unusual, obviously. Lincoln was taught by itinerant teachers at blab schools, which were schools for younger students and paid by the students' parents. It's like private school. because school resources were scarce, much of a child's education was informal and took place outside the confines of a classroom.
Usually happened a lot back then, unless you're in like New York or Philly or something. Family, neighbors, schoolmates of Lincoln's recall that he was an avid reader.
Yep. Guess what, guys? Lincoln read.
Right. Lincoln read Aesop fables, the Bible, The Pilgrim's Progress, Robinson Crusoe, and Parson Weems' The Life of Washington. He also read newspapers, hymnals, songbooks, math books, spelling books, and other material.
And others.
I don't know what else there would be, like
I mean,
the
geometry.
farm equipment, log, manual thing.
Atlas.
Yeah.
Farmer's
Almanac, Guinness Book of World Record.
Ripley's Believe It or Not. You know. Mordecai's Believe It or Not.
Goosebumps.
Goose Pimples.
Right. Later studies included Shakespeare's works. He also did poetry, and he was very fond of British and American history.
Good for him.
Although Lincoln was unusually tall.
Oh, I mean, he had it easy. American history wasn't even 100 years old.
Right.
Bastard.
Although Lincoln was unusually tall, he was 6'3¼ and strong. He spent so much time reading that some neighbors thought he was lazy for all his reading, scribbling, writing, ciphering, writing poetry, etc. And they said Lincoln, he was only doing all that just to avoid strenuous manual labor. That lazy boy.
Well, his stepmother did acknowledge that he didn't enjoy physical labor, but loved to read. He read so much, was so studious, took so little physical exercise, was so laborious in his studies, that years later, when Lincoln lived in Illinois, Henry McHenry remembered that he became emaciated, and his best friends were afraid that he would craze himself.
Oh.
He just was reading.
Right. He's going crazy.
Lincoln also first began studying law during this time. His interest in the law having been piqued after being acquitted of a charge of operating a ferry boat without a license.
Ooh, he was like, ooh, that ain't never going to happen again. Right. Lincoln, he had been using a flatboat he had built to ferry passengers of steamboats on the Ohio River between Indiana and Kentucky when two brothers who operated a ferry boat from the Kentucky side accused him of infringing on their business. Lincoln, he was charged with operating a ferry boat without a license. A local justice of the peace, Squire Samuel Pate, he ruled in Lincoln's favor.
Hey, look at that.
After the case was over, Lincoln, he conversed extensively with Pate,
What are you going to say?
who told him of the difficulties arising with ignorance of the law and that every man would be a better and more useful citizen if he knew the law which he lived under.
Wow, no judge or anything would tell you that nowadays.
Right.
They don't want you to know the law.
Right. And if you're going to have a business, you better know that law of what the business that you own.
Especially. Well, Lincoln asked numerous questions about law and court procedure. At Pate's invitation, Lincoln returned several times to observe Pate hold in court.
Oh.
He subsequently began reading the revised statutes of Indiana. The volume Lincoln read was owned by his friend David Turnham, who was an Indiana constable.
Ooh.
As an officer of the law, Turnham was required to keep the book for ready reference and could not loan it, so Lincoln repeatedly visited his home to read it.
Right.
Turnham recalled that he would come to my house and sit and read it. It was the first law book he ever saw. His mother Sally and cousin Dennis also recalled that he thoroughly studied the book. Okay, guys.
He took particular interest in the historic documents in the book, such as the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, the Constitution of Indiana. In addition, Lincoln attended court sessions in Boonville, Rockport, and Princeton. As well as reading, Lincoln cultivated other skills and interests during his youth in Kentucky and Indiana. He developed a plain, backwoods style of speaking, which he practiced during his youth by telling stories and sermons to his family, schoolmates, and members of the local community. By the very time that he was 21, Lincoln had become an able and eloquent orator, quote unquote, somebody said. However, some historians have argued his speaking style, figures of speech, and vocabulary remained unrefined, even as he entered national politics. I mean, he's still going to have that little twang.
Right. 1830, when he was 21, 13 members of the extended Lincoln family moved to Illinois. Thomas, Sally, Abraham, Sally's son, John. They went as one family. I would hope so.
Right.
Dennis Hanks and his wife, Elizabeth, who was also Abraham's stepsister, and their 4 children, they joined the party as well.
Fantastic.
Hank's half-brother, Squire Hall, along with his wife, Matilda Johnston, another of Lincoln's stepsisters, and their son. They formed the third family group.
Okay.
Historians disagree on who initiated the move, but it may have been Dennis Hanks rather than Thomas Lincoln.
Well, Thomas had no obvious reason to even leave Indiana. He owned land, respected member of his community. But Hanks, on the other hand, he did not fare as well as old Thomas. In addition to John Hanks, one of Dennis's cousins lived in Macon County, Illinois. Dennis later remarked that Sally refused to part with her daughter, Elizabeth, so Sally may have persuaded Thomas to move to Illinois. Oh.
The Lincoln's Hanks Halls family, they departed Indiana in early March 1830. As generally agreed, they crossed the Wabash River in Vincennes, Indiana, into Illinois, and the family settled on a site selected in Macon County, which was 10 miles west of Decatur.
Oh.
Lincoln, who was 21 years old at the time, helped his father build a log cabin and fences. He cleared 10 acres, and they put in a crop of corn.
Fantastic.
That autumn, the entire family fell ill with a fever, but all survived.
Holy shit.
Early winter of 1831 was especially brutal, with many locals calling it the worst they've ever experienced. In Illinois, it was known as the Winter of Deep Snow.
Damn.
In the spring, the Lincoln family prepared to move to a homestead in Coles County. Lincoln, he was ready to strike it out on his own.
Right. He's like, I gotta go.
Thomas and Sally, they moved to Coles County and remained in Illinois for the rest of their lives.
About time, Thomas. Shit.
Right, jeez, stay down.
Right. Although Sally Lincoln and his cousin Dennis Hanks maintained that Thomas loved and supported old Abe, the father-son relationship became strained after the family moved to Illinois.
Well, Abe's ready to go, and
Right.
the Thomas guy's like, we need you here, man.
Well, perhaps Thomas did not fully appreciate his son's ambition, while Abraham never knew of Thomas's early struggles.
Well, you got to communicate, guys.
1851, after the move to Illinois, Abe, he refused to visit his dying daddy and failed to take his own sons to visit their grandparents.
Oh.
Wow. Historian Rodney O. Davis has argued that the reason for the strain in the relationship was due to Lincoln's success as a lawyer and his marriage to Mary Todd Lincoln, who came from a wealthy, aristocratic family, and the two men no longer related to each other's circumstances in life. It's like, you looking down on me, boy?
Right.
Yes, I'm taller.
Lincoln, along with John Johnson and John Hanks, they accepted an offer from Denton Offutt to meet in Springfield and take a load of cargo to New Orleans in 1831. He's heading back to New Orleans. They departed from Springfield in late April or early May, and they did that along the Sangamon River. The boat had difficulty getting past a mill dam 20 miles northwest of Springfield near the village of New Salem. Offutt, who was impressed by New Salem's location and believed that steamboats could navigate the river to the village, made arrangements to rent the mill and open a general store.
Fantastic.
He then hired Lincoln as his clerk, and the two men returned to New Salem after they discharged their cargo in New Orleans. So we got a new business, boys.
When Lincoln returned to New Salem, late July 1831, he found a promising community, but it probably never had a population that exceeded 100 residents.
That's fine. That's all you need.
New Salem, small commercial settlement, served several local communities. The village had a sawmill, a grist mill, blacksmith shop, cooper's shop, wool carding shop, a hat maker, a general store, and a tavern that spread out over more than a dozen buildings. Oh, that's cool. It's decent.
Now, soon after he moved to New Salem, Lincoln met Anne Rutledge. Historians, they don't agree on the significance or nature of the relationship, but according to many, she was his first and perhaps most passionate love. At first, they were probably just close friends, but soon they had reached an understanding that they would be married as soon as Anne had completed her studies at the Female Academy in Jacksonville. Their plans were cut short in the summer of 1835 when it was probably typhoid fever hit New Salem. Anne, she died August 25th, 1835, and Lincoln went through a period of extreme melancholy that lasted for months.
Son of a bitch.
Historians have suggested that Lincoln's decision to study law may have also been tied to his interest in attracting Anne Rutledge.
Offutt, he did not open his store until September, so Lincoln found temporary work in the interim, and it was quickly accepted by the townspeople as a hard-working and cooperative young man.
Take that,
Yeah.
bitches in Illinois and Indiana.
Yeah, sons of bitches. Once Lincoln began working in the store, he met a rougher crowd of settlers and workers from the surrounding communities who came into New Salem to purchase supplies or have their corn ground. Lincoln's humor, storytelling abilities, and physical strength fit the young, raucous element. During his first winter in New Salem, Lincoln attended a meeting of the New Salem Debating Club.
Oh, here we go. His performance there, along with his efficiency in managing the store, sawmill, and gristmill, in addition to his other efforts as self-improvement, soon gained the attention of the town's leaders, such as Dr. John Allen, Mentor Graham, and James Rutledge. The men encouraged Lincoln to enter politics, feeling that he was capable of supporting the interests of their community. March of 1832, Lincoln announced his candidacy in a written article that appeared in the Sangamo Journal, which was published in Springfield.
Lincoln, he admired Henry Clay and his American system. The national political climate was undergoing a change. Local Illinois issues were the primary political concerns of the election. Lincoln opposed the development of a local railroad project, but he supported improvements in the Sangamon River that would increase its navigability. Yeah, when you put the railroads there, it just decimates a town.
Yeah, unless it's going through the town.
Right. Although the two-party political system that pitted Democrats against Whigs had not yet formed, Lincoln, he would become one of the leading Whigs in the state legislature within the next few years.
And by the spring of 1832, Offutt's business had failed, and Lincoln was out of work. Around this time, the Black Hawk War erupted, and Lincoln joined a group of volunteers from New Salem to repel Black Hawk, who was leading a group of 450 warriors, along with 1,500 women and children. They wanted to reclaim traditional tribal lands in Illinois.
Wow.
Lincoln was elected as captain of his unit, but he and his men never saw combat. Lincoln later commented in the late 1850s that the selection by his peers was a success which gave me more pleasure than any I've had since.
Oh.
Lincoln returned to central Illinois after a few months of militia service to campaign in Sangamon County before the August 6th legislative election. When the votes were tallied, Lincoln finished 8 out of 13 candidates.
Wow.
Only the top 4 candidates were elected, but Lincoln managed to somehow secure 277 out of the 300 votes cast in New Salem.
Damn.
Without a job, Lincoln and William Berry, who was a member of Lincoln's militia company during the Black Hawk War, they purchased one of the 3 general stores in New Salem, which they called the Lincoln Berry General Store.
Fantastic.
Good for them. No, not out of job no more.
Right. The two men, they signed personal notes to purchase the business and a later acquisition of another store's inventory. Oh, nice. But their enterprise failed. 1833, New Salem was no longer a growing community. Sangamon River proved to be inadequate for commercial transportation. No roads or railroads allowed easy access to other markets either.
Well, guess what, Lincoln? You shouldn't oppose the railroad then.
In January, Berry applied for a liquor license, but the added revenue was not enough to save the business. With the closure of the Lincoln Berry store, Lincoln, once again, unemployed. And guess what? It's time to leave New Salem.
May 1833, with the assistance of friends interested in keeping him in New Salem, Lincoln secured an appointment from President Andrew Jackson as the postmaster of New Salem, a position he kept for 3 years. During this time, he earned about $150 to $175 as postmaster, hardly enough to be considered a full-time source of income. Another friend helped Lincoln obtain an appointment as an assistant to county surveyor, John Calhoun, who was a Democratic political appointee. Lincoln had no experience at surveying, but he relied on, well, you should have experience and make it your life's work since you got screwed out of everything.
You ain't kidding.
He relied on borrowed copies of 2 works and was able to teach himself the practical application of surveying techniques, as well as the trigonometric basis of the process. All right. His income proved sufficient to meet his day-to-day expenses.
Oh, that's nice.
But the notes from his partnership with Berry were coming due.
Yes,
I got to pay that off.
Well, it was either 1833 or 1834. Lincoln, he met Mary Owens, the sister of his friend Elizabeth Abel. She was visiting from her home in Kentucky. 1836, in a conversation with Elizabeth, Lincoln agreed to court Mary if she ever returned to New Salem. I like how they do that. She comes back, yeah, sure, why not?
Right, whatever.
Send her my way. Mary returned in November of 1836, and Lincoln courted her for a time, but they had second thoughts about the relationship and didn't work out. 16th of August, 1837, Lincoln wrote Mary a letter from Springfield suggesting to end the relationship. She never replied, and the courtship was over.
Well, go back to 1834. Lincoln's decision to run for the state legislature for a second time was strongly influenced by his need to satisfy his debts, what he jokingly referred to as his national debt, and the additional income that would come from a legislative salary.
Okay.
By this time, he was a member of the Whig Party. His campaign strategy excluded a discussion of the national issues and concentrated on traveling throughout the district and greeting voters.
All right.
The district's leading Whig candidate was Springfield attorney John Todd Stewart, whom Lincoln knew from his militia service during the Black Hawk War.
Local Democrats feared Stewart more than Lincoln, offered to withdraw 2 of their candidates from the field of 13, where only the top 4 vote-getters would be elected, and they did that to support Lincoln. Well, that's nice of them,
He
right?
said, how about get out of the Whig Party, come to the Democrats, and we'll get you up there.
Stewart, who was confident of his own victory, told Lincoln to go ahead and accept the Democrats' endorsement. 4th of August, Lincoln polled 1,376 votes, the second highest number of votes in the race. and he won one of the 4 seats in the election, as did Stewart.
Well, good for you, buddy.
Lincoln, he was reelected to the state legislature in 1836, 1838, and 1840.
Well, Stewart, who was a cousin of Lincoln's future wife, Mary Todd, was impressed with Lincoln and encouraged him to study law. Lincoln was probably familiar with courtrooms from an early age. While the family was still in Kentucky, his father, yes, we know the land deeds. We know that while the family was still in Kentucky, his father was frequently involved in filing land deeds, serving on juries, and attending sheriff's sales. And later, Lincoln may have been aware of his own father's legal issues.
Yeah, since they had to move every frickin' year and a half because somebody was like, "You're on my land." It's like when you're sitting in a seat. Excuse me. You're in my seat.
Well, I got the ticket here that says it's mine.
Well, you haven't been here for the first 2 quarters.
When the family moved to Indiana, Lincoln lived within 15 miles of 3 county courthouses. Okay. Attracted by the opportunity of hearing a good oral presentation, as many others did on the frontier, he attended court sessions as a spectator. Why not? You got nothing else going on.
The practice continued when he moved to New Salem. Noticing how often lawyers referred to them, Lincoln made a point of reading and studying the revised statutes of Indiana, the Declaration of Independence, and, guessed it, the United States Constitution, which politicians read today.
Right.
New Salem residents recalled Lincoln reading law books in 1831 or 1832.
One of those years he did it, I swear.
Lincoln biographer Douglas L. Wilson considers this reading to have been exploratory. Lincoln wrote that he began studying law in earnest after the election of 1834. Well, you're in the state legislature, bud.
Right. Well, using books borrowed from the law firm of Stewart and Judge Thomas Drummond, Lincoln began to study law in earnest during the first half of 1835. He did not attend law school and stated, "I studied with nobody."
Oh, but that's how he always learned everything, huh?
At the time, the predominant method of legal education was to read law as an apprentice in a law office.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to college.
Right.
Although he was never a formal apprentice, Lincoln may have been mentored by Stewart in his law studies. New Salem resident William Green, he stated that Stewart gave Lincoln many explanations and elucidations of law. As part of his training, he read copies of Blackstone's Commentaries, Chitty's Pleadings, Greenleaf's Evidence, and Joseph Story's Equity Jurisprudence.
Okay, so
Guess those are meaningful.
Right. He also likely read Kent's Commentaries on American Law. February 1836, Lincoln stopped working as a surveyor. March 1836, he took the first step to becoming a practicing attorney when he applied to the clerk of the Sangamon County Court to register as a man of good and moral character. Look at that. After passing an oral examination by a panel of practicing attorneys, O. Abe received his law license on the 9th of September, 1836. April 1837, he was enrolled to practice before the Supreme Court, Illinois, and he moved to Springfield, where he went into partnership with Stewart once again.
Got their own law firm. Lincoln's first session in the Illinois legislature ran from December 1st, 1834 to February 13th, 1835. In preparation for the session, Lincoln borrowed $200 from Coleman Smoot, who was one of the richest men in Sangamon County, and spent $60 of it on his first suit of clothes.
Nice.
As the second youngest legislature in this term and one of the 36 first-time attendees, Lincoln was primarily an observer, but his colleagues soon recognized his mastery of the technical language of the law and asked him to draft bills for them.
Nice. Look at Lincoln.
Good for you, bud.
Good for this guy. Well, Lincoln announced his bid for re-election. 1836 of June, he addressed the controversial issue of expanded suffrage. Democrats advocated universal suffrage for white males residing in the state for at least 6 months. They hoped to bring Irish immigrants who were attracted to the state because of its canal projects onto the voting rolls as Democrats as well.
Of course.
Abe supported the traditional Whig position that voting should be limited to property owners. Lincoln, he was reelected on the 1st of August, 1836, as the top vote getter this time in the Sangamon delegation. Look at him, top vote getter.
Well, this delegation of 2 senators and 7 representatives was nicknamed the Long Nine because of all of them were above average height.
Oh.
Despite being the second youngest of the group, Lincoln was viewed as the group's leader and the floor leader of the Whig minority.
Wow.
The Long Nine's primary agenda was the relocation of the state capital from Vandalia to Springfield and a vigorous program of internal improvements for the state. Lincoln's influence within the legislature and within his party continued to grow with his reelection for 38 and 40.
Nice. Look at this guy. By the 1838-39 legislative session, Lincoln, he served on at least 14 committees, worked behind the scenes to manage the program of the Whig minority. While serving as a state legislator, Illinois Auditor James Shields, he challenged Lincoln to a duel.
Oh, damn. Why?
Wow. Lincoln had published an inflammatory letter in the Sangamon Journal, a Springfield newspaper, that poked fun at Shields. Lincoln's future wife, Mary Todd, and her close friend. They continued writing letters about Shields without Lincoln's knowledge. Shields took offense to the articles and demanded satisfaction.
So Mary Todd and her little friend are just out there flaming fanning the flames.
Almost got old Abe murdered.
The incident escalated to the two parties meeting on Missouri's Sunflower Island near Alton, Illinois, to participate in a duel, which was illegal in Illinois.
Right.
Lincoln took responsibility for the articles and accepted.
Oh, wow.
Lincoln chose cavalry broadswords as the duel's weapons because Shields was known as an excellent marksman.
Right.
Ah, there you go, bud. Just prior to engaging in combat, Lincoln demonstrated his physical advantage, which was his long arm reach, by easily cutting a branch above Shields' head. Their seconds, who are the guys that are with him, they intervened and convinced the men to cease hostilities on the grounds that Lincoln had not written the letters.
Right there, he's seeing what the shit, but what was about to happen there? They're like, Illinois governor called for a special legislative session.
Why is that not talked about more?
Right.
Lincoln just getting into a duel
Right.
with freaking swords, dude.
Right. Wow. The Illinois governor, he called for a special legislative session during the winter of 1835 and early 1836. He did that in order to finance what became known as the most popular canal ever, the Illinois and Michigan Canal.
Yep.
Which connected the Illinois and Chicago rivers and linked Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River.
Right.
The proposal would allow the state government to finance the construction.
Why that has anything to do with Michigan, I don't know, but
Right. The proposal would allow the state government to finance the construction with a $500,000 loan.
that's a lot of money.
Lincoln, he's like, you know what? I'm voting in favor, which passed 28 to 27.
Look at you, Lincoln, decide and vote, huh?
I was too. Wow.
Lincoln had always supported Henry Clay's vision of the American system, which saw a prosperous America supported by a well-developed network of roads, canals, and later railroads.
Wait, is that Henry Clay Ford?
No, just Henry Clay. Lincoln favored raising the funds for these projects through the federal government's sale of public lands to eliminate interest expenses.
Nice.
Otherwise, private capital should bear the cost alone.
Right.
Fearing that Illinois would fall behind the other states in economic development, he shifted his position to allow the state to provide the necessary support for private developers.
Okay,
I mean,
right.
if you want to get shit done, you got to get it done somehow.
Right. Well, in the very next session, a newly elected legislator, Stephen A. Douglas, he went even further and proposed a comprehensive $10 million state loan program. It was like, what? There's that much money?
Right. That exists?
And Lincoln was like, you know what? I'll support that as well. However, the Panic of 1837 effectively destroyed the possibility of more internal improvements in Illinois. The state became littered with unfinished roads and partially dug canals. The values of the state's bonds fell dramatically, and interest on the state's debts were 8 times its total revenue.
Damn.
The state government took 40 years to pay off this very debt.
Lincoln had a couple ideas to salvage the internal improvements program. First, he proposed that the state buy public lands at a discount from federal government and then sell them to new settlers at a profit.
Yeah.
But the federal government rejected the idea. They're like, no, we'll sell them at a profit.
Right.
Next, he proposed a graduated land tax that would have passed more of the tax burden to the owners of the most valuable land, but the majority of the legislators were unwilling to commit any further state funds to internal improvement projects.
Okay.
The state's financial depression continued through 1839.
1830s, Illinois welcomed more immigrants.
What is Chicago doing? They're not making no money for the damn state or what?
I don't know, but they welcome immigrants from New York and New England who tended to move into the northern and central parts of the state. Vandalia, which was located in the more stagnant southern section, seemed unsuitable as a state seat of government. On the other hand, Springfield and Sangamon County was strategically located in central Illinois and was already growing in population and refinement. Those who opposed the relocation of the state government to Springfield first attempted to weaken the Sangamon County delegation's influence by dividing the county onto 2 new counties.
Oh.
But
So they've been doing some sketchy shit forever, man.
It's the Democrats, man. But old Abe, he was instrumental in first amending and then killing this proposal in his own committee. Look at that.
All right, throughout the lengthy debate, Lincoln's political skills were repeatedly tested. He finally succeeded when the legislature accepted his proposal that the chosen city would be required to contribute $50,000 plus 2 acres of land for construction of a new state capitol building.
Oh.
Only Springfield could comfortably meet his financial demand.
Damn.
The final action was tabled twice, but Lincoln resurrected it by finding acceptable amendments to draw additional support, including one that would have allowed reconsideration into the next session.
Fantastic. As the other locations were voted down, Springfield selected by 46 to 37 vote on 28th February 1837. Under Abe's leadership, reconsideration efforts were defeated, in the 1838-1839 sessions. Orville Browning, who would later become a close Lincoln friend and confidant, guided the legislation through the Illinois Senate, and the move became effective in the year of 1839.
Look at Lincoln getting shit done. Mm-hmm. Well, Lincoln, like Henry Clay, favored federal control over the nation's banking system. Ooh. But President Jackson had effectively killed the Bank of the United States by 1835. Same year, Lincoln crossed party lines to vote with pro-bank Democrats in chartering the Illinois State Bank. As he did in the internal improvements debates, Lincoln searched for the best available alternative. According to historian and Lincoln biographer Richard Carradine, Lincoln felt that a well-regulated bank would provide a sound, elastic currency, protect the public against the extreme prescriptions of the hard money men on one side and the paper inflationists on the other. It would be a safe depository for public funds and provide the credit mechanisms needed to sustain state improvements. He said it would also bring to an end the extortionate money lending.
That's true.
Opponents of the state bank initiated an investigation designed to close the bank in the 36-37 legislative session. But not so fast.
Okay. Well, that makes a little bit of sense there, but 11th of January, 1837, Abe made his first major legislative speech supporting the bank and attacking its opponents. He condemned that lawless and mobocratic spirit which already abroad in the land and is spreading with rapid and fearful impetuosity to the ultimate overthrow of every institution or even moral principle in which persons and property have hitherto found security. And he's like, this shit's serious. Blaming the opposition entirely on the political class, Lincoln called politicians at least one long step removed from the honest men.
It's not lying about that. Honest Abe.
All right. Well, he also commented, I make the assertion boldly and without fear of contradiction that no man who does not hold an office or does not aspire to one has ever found any fault of the bank. It has doubled the prices of the products of their farms and filled their pockets with a sound circulating medium, and they are all well pleased with its operations.
Well, that was then.
Right.
Westerners in the Jacksonian era, which is President Andrew Jackson, they were generally skeptical of all banks.
Right.
And this was aggravated after the Panic of 1837 when the Illinois Bank suspended specie payments.
Ooh.
Those made in coin or bullion rather than paper.
Oh.
They suspended specie payments, which are coins or bullion, in favor of paper money. Lincoln still defended the bank, but it was too strongly linked to a failing credit system that led to devalued currency and loan foreclosures to generate much political support.
Makes sense.
1839, Democrats led another investigation of the state bank with Lincoln as a Whig representative on the investigating committee.
Oh.
Wow. You got to have impartial voices.
Yeah. Lincoln was instrumental in the committee's conclusion that the suspension of the specie payments was related to the uncontrollable economic conditions rather than any organic defects of the institutions themselves. However, though, the legislation allowed the suspension of the specie payments. It was set to expire at the end of December of 1840 anyhow, and Democrats wanted to adjourn without further extensions.
They're like, we're going to let it run out.
Yeah.
In an attempt to avoid a quorum on adjournment, Lincoln and several others jumped out of a first-story window.
Whoa!
But the speaker counted them as present, and the bank was killed. Oh, damn, they said, we're not here.
Fantastic.
Jeez. By 1841, Lincoln was less supportive of the state bank.
I bet so.
Although he would continue to make speeches around the state supporting it. He concluded, if there was to be this continual warfare against the institutions of the state, the sooner it was brought to an end, the better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
He's saying, let's just put the shit to bed, man.
Right. Well, in the 1830s, slaveholding states began to take notice of the growth of the anti-slavery rhetoric in the North. In particular, they were outraged by the American Anti-Slavery Society's pamphlets depicting slave owners as cruel brutes. Non-slave states sometimes also opposed abolitionism. In January of 1837, the Illinois legislature passed a resolution declaring that they highly disapprove of the formation of abolition societies. Oh. And that the right of property in slaves is sacred to the slaveholding states by the federal government, and that they cannot be deprived of that right without their consent. And they also stated that the general government cannot abolish slavery in the District of Columbia against the will of the citizens of that said district. Wow. Look at these guys.
The vote in the Illinois Senate was 18-0 and 77-6 in the House, with Lincoln and Dan Stone, who was also from Sangamon County, voted in opposition.
Okay.
Because relocation of the state capital was still the number one issue on the two men's agendas, they made no comment on their votes until the relocation was approved.
All right.
On March 3rd, with his other legislative priorities behind him, Lincoln filed a formal written protest with the legislature that stated, the institution of slavery is founded on both injustice and bad policy.
Okay. There it goes. Lincoln, he criticized abolitionists on practical grounds, arguing that the promulgation of abolition doctrines tends rather to increase than to abate its slavery's evils.
Sort of like if you tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it anyways.
Right. He also addressed the issue of slavery in the nation's capital in a different manner from the resolutions. And he wrote this: the Congress of the United States has the power under the Constitution to abolish slavery in the District of Columbia. But that power ought not to be exercised unless at the request of the people of that said district.
All right.
And Nicolay and Hayes, Abraham Lincoln, A History, Volume 1. The editor stated that the protest briefly defined his position on the slavery question, and so far as it goes, it was then the same as it is now.
Lincoln's address to the Young Men's Lyceum of Springfield, January 27, 1833, was titled The Perpetuation of Our Political Institutions. In this speech, Lincoln described the dangers of slavery in the United States, an institution he believed would corrupt the federal government. Yet he believed that, although bad laws, if they exist, should be replaced as soon as possible, still, while they continue in force, for the sake of example, they should be religiously observed.
Obviously. Otherwise, your new laws that you make.
Saying even if it's a bad law, until we can get it replaced for something other, you got to obey the law, man.
1837, from the start of the law partnership with Stewart, Old Abe handled most of the firm's clients, while Stewart was primarily concerned with politics and election to the United States House of Reps.
Yeah, it's good. He gets elected to there, then their law firm would boom, wouldn't it?
You think the law practice has as many clients as it could handle. Most fees were $5, with the common fee ranging between $2.50 and $10. Lincoln quickly realized that he was equal in ability and effectiveness to most other attorneys. Whether they were self-taught like Lincoln or had studied with a more experienced lawyer, following Stewart's elected to Congress in November 1839, Lincoln, he ran the practice on his own. Lincoln, like Stewart, he considered his legal career as simply a catalyst for his political ambitions. I mean, it's a stepping stone, baby.
Well, in 1839, Mary Todd, she moved from her family's home in Lexington, Kentucky, to Springfield, which was the home of her eldest sister, Elizabeth, and Elizabeth's husband, Ninian Edwards.
Oh.
He was the son of Ninian Edwards.
Fantastic.
Who are you, buddy?
Who's this guy?
Ninian Edwards was a political figure who was prominent in Illinois. He was the first and only governor of the Illinois Territory.
Fantastic.
All right. Well,
Born in
good for you.
Maryland.
Damn, so she got some, her family's pretty powerful then, huh? Mary was popular in the Springfield social scene, but soon was attracted to Lincoln. Sometime in 1840, the two became engaged. They initially set a January 1st, 1841 wedding date, but mutually called it off. During the break in their courtship, Lincoln briefly courted Sarah Rickard,
Oh, wow.
Rickard, whom he had known since 1837.
Okay.
He proposed marriage to Sarah in 1841, but was rejected.
Oh.
Sarah later said that his peculiar manner and his general deportment would not be likely to fascinate a young girl just entering the society world.
Oh, wow. It's like he's way too old. He's way too old.
Plus, she's a snob.
Right.
Clearly.
Lincoln, he still had conflicted feelings concerning Mary Todd. Well, sure he did. He just got rejected.
Right. Like, damn, should I go back there?
Right. August 1841, he visited Joshua Speed, his close friend and former roommate, who had moved to Louisville. Lincoln met Speed's fiancée while there, and after his return to Springfield, Speed and Lincoln corresponded over Speed's own doubts about marriage.
Oh.
Lincoln advised Speed that helped convince him to proceed with the marriage. He's like, don't give up, bud. In turn, Speed urged Lincoln to do the same. He's like, well, if I gotta
do it, you're going to be tied down, too.
why don't you get married? Lincoln resumed his courtship with Mary, and on the 4th of November, 1842, they were married at the Edwards' home. Oh. In a letter written a few days after the wedding, Lincoln wrote, "Nothing new here except my marrying, which to me is a matter of profound wonder."
So why did I do it?
Like, what the hell is that?
The couple had 4 sons. Robert Todd Lincoln. He was born in Springfield on August 1st, 1843. He was their only child to survive into adulthood. The other Lincoln sons were born in Springfield and died either during childhood or their teen years. Edward Baker Lincoln, he was born March 10th, 1846, died February 1st, 1850. in Springfield. Wow. William Wallace Lincoln, born December 21st, 1850, died February 20th, 1862.
In the White House.
In the White House during Lincoln's first term, which was from typhoid.
Yeah, that's when Mary Todd started going insane.
Well, Thomas Tad Lincoln, he was born April 4th, 1853, and died July 16th, 1871.
18.
He died in Chicago. During the American Civil War, 4 of Mary Todd Lincoln's brothers fought for the Confederacy, with 1 wounded and another killed. Lieutenant David Todd, Mary's half-brother, served as commandant of the Libby Prison. Oh, geez. Libby Prison Camp during the war. Jeez.
Wow. By 1840, Lincoln was drawing one.
How'd she feel about it?
Right.
About slavery and stuff.
That's right. I like that. By 1840, Lincoln was drawing $1,000 annually from the law practice, along with his salary as a legislator. However, when Stuart was reelected to Congress, Lincoln was no longer content to carry the entire load. April of 1841, he entered into a new partnership with Stephen T. Logan. Logan, he was 9 years older than Lincoln. He was the leading attorney in Sangamon County, also a former attorney in Kentucky before he moved to Illinois. Logan saw that Abe as a compliment to his practice, recognizing that Abe's effectiveness with juries was superior to his own in that area. Once again, clients were plentiful for the firm. Although Lincoln received 1/3 of the firm's proceeds rather than the even split he had enjoyed with Stewart.
That's fine.
Well, the other guy was like, dude, I'm
the best.
Well
Dude.
established.
Lincoln's association with Logan was a learning experience. He absorbed from Logan some of the finer points of law and the importance of proper and detailed case research and preparation.
Fantastic.
Logan's written pleadings were precise and on point, and Lincoln used them as his model. However, much of Lincoln's development was still self-taught. I mean, you got to get that in there.
Right.
Historian David Herbert Donald, there's the old 3-name guy.
Yeah.
He wrote that Logan taught him that there was more to law than common sense and simple equity.
Definitely right.
Lincoln's study began to focus on procedures and precedents instead.
There you go, bud. It's not what you can prove.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically
Not what you can
follow. It's not what you say, it's what you can prove.
What you can prove, Jake. Breaking news.
Yeah, basically, you got to actually do law and
Right.
apply it to cases.
Right. During this time, Abe did not study law books, but he did spend night after night after night after night in the Supreme Court library, searching out precedents that applied to the cases he was working on. Here you go, buddy. That's how you do it. Lincoln later on stated, "I love to dig up the question by the roots and hold it up and dry it before the fires of the mind." His written briefs, especially important Illinois Supreme Court cases, were prepared in great detail, with precedents noted that often went back to the origins of the English common law. I mean, you got to. That's why you see shit. That's why you see shit nowadays. If there's like one word that's just wrong, it's just, it blows the whole thing out of the water. It's just crazy.
Lincoln's growing skills became evident as his appearances before the Supreme Court increased and would serve him well into his political career. By the time he went to Washington in 1861, he had appeared over 300 times before this court.
Damn.
Lincoln biographer Stephen B. Oates, he wrote, "It was here that he earned his reputation as a lawyer's lawyer, adept at meticulous preparation and cogent argument."
Lincoln's partnership with Logan dissolved in the fall of 1844 when Logan entered into a partnership with his son.
Look at that.
Logan and Logan. Lincoln, who probably could have had his choice of more established attorneys, he was tired of being the junior partner and entered into a partnership with William Herndon,
Look at you, buddy.
who has been reading law in offices of Logan and Lincoln. Herndon, like Lincoln, was an active Whig, but the party in Illinois at the time was split into 2 factions. Lincoln, he was connected to the older, silk-stocking element of the party through his marriage to Mary Todd. Herndon, he was one of the leaders of the younger, more populist portion of the party. Oh, damn. So
You got both of them.
that's a good thing. Yeah?
The Lincoln-Herndon partnership continued through Lincoln's presidential election,
Wow.
and Lincoln remained a partner of record until his death. Before his partnership with Herndon, Lincoln had not regularly attended court in neighboring communities. This changed as Lincoln became one of the most active regulars of the circuit court through 1854, interrupted only by his 2-year stint in Congress.
Wow.
The 8th Circuit covered 11,000 square miles. Each spring and fall, Lincoln traveled the district for 9 to 10 weeks at a time, netting around $150 for each 10-week circuit. On the road, lawyers and judges lived in cheap hotels with 2 layers to a bed.
2 lawyers.
Layers. Layers of lawyers. 2 layers of lawyers. With 2 lawyers to a bed and 6 or 8 men to a room.
Damn. Lincoln's reputation for integrity and fairness on the circuit, it led to him being in high demand, both from clients and local attorneys who needed assistance. It was during this very time, right in the circuit, that he picked up one of his lasting nicknames, Honest Abe.
Honest Abe.
The clients he represented, the men he rode the circuit with, the lawyers he met along the way, became Lincoln's most loyal political supporters. One of these, David Davis, fellow Whig who, like Lincoln, promoted nationalist economic programs and opposed slavery without actually becoming an abolitionist.
He joined the circuit in 1848 as a judge and would occasionally appoint Lincoln to fill in for him. They traveled the circuit for 11 years. Lincoln would eventually appoint him to the United States Supreme Court. Well, look at that.
Wow.
Another close associate was Ward Hill Lamon. He was an attorney in Danville, Illinois. He was the only local attorney with whom Lincoln had a formal working agreement. He also accompanied Lincoln to Washington in 1861. Look at him taking all his cronies with him.
Right.
It's like the friendship version of nepotism. What is that called?
Oh, unlike other attorneys on the circuit, Lincoln did not supplement his income by engaging in real estate or operating a business or a farm. His income was generally what he earned practicing law. In the 1840s, this amounted to $1,500 to $2,500 a year, increasing to $3,000 in the early 1850s and $5,000 by the mid 1850s.
He was making well over $100,000 in today's money.
1850, the firm was involved in 18% of the cases on Sangamon Court. By 1853, it had grown to 33%. It was like anything's happening is going through Abe.
Jeez. On his return from a single term in the U.S. House of Representatives, Lincoln turned down an offer of a partnership in a Chicago law firm.
Yeah, he didn't want to go to Chicago.
Lincoln was also in demand on the federal courts and was a counsel in several important patent, railroad, and commerce cases before the Illinois Supreme Court and the Federal District Court in Chicago. Lincoln was involved in at least 2 cases involving slavery.
Oh.
1841, in an Illinois Supreme Court case, Bailey versus Cromwell, Lincoln successfully prevented the sale of a woman who was alleged to be a slave, making the argument that in Illinois, the presumption of law was that every person was free without regard to color.
Oh, so there you go. That probably shouldn't have lasted long. 1847, Abraham Lincoln defended Robert Matson, a slave owner who was trying to retrieve his runaway slaves.
Look at that. He's on both sides.
Matson brought slaves from his Kentucky plantation to work on land he owned in Illinois, which I think was illegal. The slaves were represented by Orlando Ficklin, Usher Linder, and Charles H. Constable. The slaves ran away because they believed that once they were in Illinois, they were free, since the Northwest Ordinance forbade slavery in the territory that included Illinois. Well, though, in this case, Lincoln invoked the right of transit, which allows slaveholders to take their slaves temporarily into free territory. Hey, he bought this land. He has workers coming up to get it worked up. As long as he takes them back
In a timely manner.
he's good to go.
Well, Lincoln also stressed that Matson did not intend to have the slaves remain permanently in Illinois.
There you go.
Even with these arguments, judges in Coles County ruled against Lincoln, and the slaves set free.
Wow.
Donald notes, neither the Matson case nor the Cromwell case should be taken as an indication of Lincoln's views on slavery. His business was law, not morality.
Exactly.
The right of transit was a legal theory recognized by some of the free states that a slave owner, like I said, could take slaves into a free state and retain ownership as long as the intent was to take them back where they were.
Right.
Like you said, taking them, I need some shit picked or farmed land, and we're going to put them back.
Railroads. We all know about railroads. They became a very important economic force in Illinois in the 1850s. As they expanded, they created myriad legal issues regarding charters and franchises, problems relating to right-of-way, problems concerning evaluation and taxation, problems relating to the duties of common carriers, and problems to the right of passengers, problems concerning merger, consolidation, and receivership.
So the railroad industry was just one big problem.
Right. Lincoln and other attorneys, they would soon find that the old railroad litigation was a major source of income.
Yeah, I bet.
Like the slave cases, sometimes Lincoln would represent the railroads, and sometimes he would represent their adversaries.
Who's ever paying me, dude?
Right. He had no legal or political agenda that was reflected in his choice of clients. Herndon referred to Lincoln as purely and entirely a case lawyer. Whatever ones he thinks he can win.
Right. And one on...
Or he thinks is right.
Or thinks he can win, probably. In one notable case, in 1851, Lincoln represented the Alton and Sangamon Railroad. They were in a dispute with James Barrett, who was a shareholder. Barrett refused to pay the balance on his pledge to the railroad on the grounds that it had changed its originally planned route. Lincoln argued that as a matter of law, a corporation is not bound by its original charter when that charter can be amended in the public interest.
That makes sense.
Card subject to change, baby. Lincoln, he also argued that the newer route proposed by Alton and Sangamon was superior and less expensive, and accordingly, the corporation had a right to sue Barrett for his delinquent payment.
I bet you Barrett had something going on with one of the cities it was supposed to pass through.
Maybe. It was supposed to go by
Right.
Riverdale or some shit. And
Right.
it said, no, we're going to pass Riverdale.
Sons of bitches. Lincoln, he won this case, and the Illinois Supreme Court decision was eventually cited by other U.S. courts. The most important civil case for Lincoln was the landmark Heard versus Rock Island Bridge Company, also known as the Effie Afton case. America's expansion west, which Lincoln strongly supported, as he should, was seen as an economic threat to the river trade. Yeah, because
Right. They don't go over there.
right, which ran north to south, primarily along the Mississippi. 1856, a steamboat collided with a bridge built by the Rock Island Railroad between Rock Island, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa.
It was the first railroad bridge to span the Mississippi. The steamboat owner sued for damages, claiming the bridge was a hazard to navigation, but Lincoln argued in court for the railroad and won, removing a costly impediment to western expansion by establishing the right of land routes to bridge waterways. Criminal law made up a small part of Lincoln and Herndon's casework. Possibly the most notable criminal trial of Lincoln's career as a lawyer. It came in 1858 when he defended the son of Lincoln's friend, Jack Armstrong. William Duff Armstrong. He had been charged with murder.
Ooh, not murder. Damn. The case became very famous for Lincoln's use of judicial notice, a rare tactic at that time. He did that to show that an eyewitness had lied on the stand. Oh, how do you do that? As a rule of law, evidence that allows a fact to be introduced into evidence if the truth of that fact is so notorious or well known that it can reasonably be doubted. Okay.
Right, so if somebody lied on the stand, but it's known out there that it's a lie, then you
Right.
can bring it in, and nobody else did that for some reason. Why is it rare? Nope, we're not letting that slide in this court.
Wow. Well, the witness testified to having seen the crime by moonlight. Lincoln produced a farmer's almanac to show that the moon on that date was at such a low angle, it could not even have provided enough illumination to see anything clearly.
Damn,
There are no street lights. There's no moonlight.
that's crazy.
It was a dark alley. Based almost entirely on this evidence, Armstrong acquitted.
That's crazy.
I mean, what else can you do? A story arose many years later that Lincoln had modified the almanac, but this was refuted by Abram Bergen, who had witnessed the trial as a young attorney and later served as a justice of the New Mexico Territorial Supreme Court.
Well, from his recollection, the prosecution had objected upon Lincoln's demonstration from the almanac and compared it to an almanac in their possession, only to find that Lincoln's was genuine.
Damn right.
Right, because there would be no more almanacs floating around. Lincoln was involved in more than 5,100 cases in Illinois alone during his 23-year legal career.
Damn.
Though many of these cases involved little more than filing a writ, others were more substantial and quite involved.
Okay.
Lincoln and his partners appeared before the Illinois Supreme Court more than 400 times.
Damn. Look at this guy. Abraham is the only United States president to have been awarded a patent for an invention.
Look at this. He's a lawyer, inventor, president.
Entrepreneur? No.
Hey, well, kind of.
As a young man, old Abe took a boatload of merchandise down to the Mississippi River from New Salem to New Orleans. At one point, the boat slid onto a dam and was set free only after heroic efforts. In later years, while traveling on the Great Lakes, Lincoln's ship ran afoul of a sandbar. The resulting invention consists of a set of bellows attached to the hull of a ship just below the waterline. On reaching a shallow place, the bellows are filled with air, and the vessel, thus buoyed, is expected to float clear. Oh, okay.
Well, the invention was never marketed, probably because of the extra weight would have increased the probability of running into sandbars more frequently.
Right.
So you're creating a problem just to solve it.
Right.
Lincoln whittled the model for his patent application with his own hands. It is on display as we speak at the Smithsonian Institution National Museum of American History. Patent number 6469 for a device for buoying vessels over shoals was issued May 22nd, 1849.
Nice.
In 1858, he called the introduction of patent laws one of the three most important developments in the world's history.
You ain't kidding.
His words, the patent system added the fuel of interest to the fire of genius. They are inscribed over the U.S. Commerce Department's north entrance.
Yeah, patent.
Well, yeah, you got a patent system that strives people to make it better instead of just
Right.
profiting off of your shit that you built. How do I get my own patent? Well, I can approve this and do this, and yeah.
Winter of 1842, 1843. Strong encouragement of his wife, Lincoln decided to pursue election to the United
She
States
was a
House.
powerful man, didn't she?
This was from the newly created 7th Congressional District. Oh, so we got a seat. Got a seat available. His main rivals were friends Edward Baker and John Hardin. February 14th, Lincoln told a local Whig political leader, "If you should hear anyone say that Lincoln don't want to go to Congress, I wish you, as a personal friend of mine, would tell him you have reason to believe he is mistaken. The truth is, I would like to go very much."
I bet you would. At the end of February, the Whigs met in Springfield, where Lincoln wrote the party platform opposing direct federal taxes and endorsing a protective tariff, a national bank, a distribution to the states of proceeds from federal land sales, and the convention system of choosing candidates.
Okay.
Baker and Lincoln campaigned vigorously throughout March, but Lincoln, believing that Baker had an insurmountable lead, he withdrew when the Sangamon County Convention was held on March 20th.
Oh, I should have stayed, bud. Well, Lincoln, he was selected as a delegate to the district convention, which met on the 1st of May in Pekin. Although Lincoln worked hard for Baker, Hardin was selected as the Whig candidate, winning by one single vote.
Damn.
Lincoln then initiated a resolution that endorsed Baker for the nomination in 2 years. The resolution passed, which seemed to set a precedent for a single term with rotation among the party's leaders. Okay. And suggested that Lincoln would be the next in line after Baker.
So you got 4 years, bud.
Right. Makes sense.
1844, Lincoln campaigned enthusiastically for Henry Clay, who was the Whig nominee for president and a personal hero of his. On the campaign trail, Lincoln and the other Illinois Whigs emphasized tariff issues while touting the economic success of the tariff of 1842 that had been passed in Congress under Whig leadership. Part of the campaign pitted Lincoln in a series of debates against Democrat John Calhoun, who was a candidate for Congress. Campaigned in Illinois for the most of 1844, he spoke out against the annexation of Texas, who was a potential slave territory. He promoted national and state banks and opposed the wave of nativism that would become a major political issue a decade later.
Damn right it did. On the last issue, Lincoln declared that the guarantee of the rights of conscience, as found in our Constitution, is the most sacred and inviolable, and one that belongs no less to the Catholic than to the Protestant, and all that attempts to abridge or interfere with these rights, either of Catholic or Protestant, directly or indirectly, have our decided disapprobation, and shall ever have our most effective opposition.
Basically saying
Y'all won.
everybody can come.
Yeah.
Well, Clay's opponent, James K. Polk, carried Illinois and also won the presidency. In Illinois and elsewhere, Polk's support for the acquisition of Texas and Oregon seemed to carry the day. Lincoln and many other Whigs blamed the Free Soil Liberty Party for dividing the vote in New York, which allowed Polk to carry that state and achieve the majority in the Electoral College. In responding to an anti-slavery Whig who equated voting for Clay, who was a slaveholder, as doing evil, Lincoln asked, if the fruit of electing Mr. Clay would have been to prevent the extension of slavery, could the act of electing him have been evil?
Hardin, he did not run for re-election in 1844. The Whig nomination, as previously agreed, went to Baker, who won election. Baker agreed not to run for re-election in 1846, but Hardin considered a run for his old seat. Much of the 7th District was included within the judicial circuit that Lincoln rode. So beginning on the September 1845, he began soliciting the support of Whig leaders and editors as he moved throughout the circuit. Old Lincoln emphasized that Hardin should be bound by the understanding reached at Pekin in 1843. He's like, he should not even be on this trail.
The debate over what had actually been agreed on in 1843 became public and bitter. In the end, Hardin withdrew and Lincoln secured the Whig nomination.
Nice.
The Democrats nominated Peter Cartwright, who was a circuit-riding Methodist preacher. Lincoln campaigned throughout the district where he was already well known. Although he was presented with campaign funds of $200, he returned most of the money after the election. Speaking of his actual campaign expenses, he noted, I made the canvass on my own horse. My entertainment, being at the houses of friends, cost me nothing. And my only outlay was 75 cents for a barrel of cider, which some farmhands insisted I should treat them to.
Oh, nice. There were few newspaper accounts of the election, but the major political issues were the annexation of Texas, which Lincoln opposed as an expansion of slavery, the Mexican War, on which Lincoln was non-committal, and the Oregon border dispute with Great Britain, which Lincoln avoided.
We don't want to mess with those guys right now.
Right. Cartwright, he avoided joint appearances with Lincoln and initiated a whispering campaign that accused Lincoln of being an infidel and a religious skeptic. Lincoln responded by pointing out that the Illinois Constitution had no religious qualifications for office. What's that have to do with anything?
All right. July 31st, he published a handbill that admitted he was not a member of a specific Christian church, but denied that he was an open scoffer at Christianity or had ever denied the truth of the scriptures.
Okay.
Cartwright's campaign was effective only in counties where Lincoln was not personally known.
Right.
Lincoln, he won the election with 56% of the vote. topping the numbers of Hardin at 53% and Baker at 52%.
Wow.
When they ran.
Right.
Due to the timing of the elections, the 30th Congress did not convene until December of 1847.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
A Whig and an admirer of the party leader Henry Clay, Lincoln, elected to a term in the United States House, 1846, representing the 7th Congressional District of Illinois. As a freshman House member, he was not a particularly powerful or influential figure. Obviously not. He spoke out against the Mexican-American War, which he attributed to President Polk's desire for military glory, that attractive rainbow that rises in showers of blood. He also challenged the president's claims regarding the Texas boundary and offered spot resolutions demanding to know the spot on U.S. soil where blood was first spilled. Oh. Okay.
You tell me where blood was first spilled, and then we'll, I guess.
On American soil.
Right. January 1848, Lincoln was among the 82 Whigs who defeated 81 Democrats in a procedural vote on an amendment to send a routine resolution back to the committee with instructions to add the words, "A war unnecessarily and unconstitutionally begun by the President of the United States."
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. The amendment passed, but the bill never reemerged from committee and was never finally voted about. They were like, we're not doing that.
Right.
Lincoln later damaged his political reputation with a speech in which he declared, "God of heaven has forgotten to defend the weak and innocent, and permitted the strong band of murderers and demons from hell to kill men, women, and children, and lay waste and pillage the land of the just." Oh, wow. Oh, wow. You don't want to do that. This is like the most religious freaking time in history.
And 2 weeks later, President Polk
Not in history, but you know.
Right. 2 weeks later, President Polk signed a peace treaty to Congress. While no one in Washington paid attention to Lincoln, the Democrats orchestrated angry outbursts from across his district, where the war was popular and many had volunteered. Morgan County, Illinois, resolutions were adopted in fervent support of the war and in wrathful denunciation of the treasonable assaults of guerrillas at home, party demagogues and slanderers of the president, defenders of the butchery at the Alamo, traducers of the heroism at San Jacinto. Wow, they're just pissed. Warned by his law partner, William Herndon, that the damage was mounting and irreparable.
Irreparable.
Yep. Lincoln decided not to run for re-election.
He said, no, I'm not doing that.
Hey, can we calm this down for a minute?
In the 1848 presidential election, Lincoln supported war hero Zachary Taylor for the Whig nomination and for president in the general. In abandoning Clay, Lincoln argued that Taylor was the only Whig that was electable. Lincoln, he attended the Whig National Convention in Philadelphia as a Taylor delegate. Following Taylor's successful nomination, Lincoln urged Taylor to run a campaign emphasizing his personal traits while leaving the controversial issues to be resolved by Congress. While Congress was in session, Lincoln spoke in favor of Taylor on the House floor, and when it adjourned in August, he remained in Washington to assist Whig Executive Committee of Congress in the campaign. So we're getting this guy, you gotta go.
Gotta go. And you have to go right now. September, Lincoln made campaign speeches in Boston and other New England locations. Remembering the election of 1844, Lincoln addressed potential free soil voters by saying that the Whigs were equally opposed to slavery, and the only issue was how they could most effectively vote against the expansion of slavery. Lincoln argued that a vote for the free soil candidate, former President Martin Van Buren, would divide the anti-slavery vote and give the election to the Democratic candidate Lewis Cass. Ooh, can you imagine President Lewis Cass?
Right.
I mean, Van Buren wasn't much better.
Right. With Taylor's victory, the incoming administration, perhaps remembering Lincoln's criticism of Taylor during the Mexican-American War, they offered Lincoln only the governorship of remote Oregon Territory.
Wow.
This distant territory was a Democratic stronghold, and acceptance of the post would have effectively ended his legal and political career in Illinois.
Right.
So he declined and resumed his law practice. Lincoln returned to practice in law in Springfield, handling every kind of business that could come before a prairie lawyer. Twice a year for 16 years, 10 weeks at a time, he appeared in county seats in the mid-state region when the county courts were in session. And that, my friends, was going to be the end of his early life into his early political career. Next week will be, it's time.
He says, you know what? I think I'm going to gear up to be the next president of the United States of this America.
Yes, sir. We're going to take a look at a little bit of the lead up to that election. We're going to take a look at the actual election. Yeah, we're going to basically look at his election or his campaign and then the election and all that stuff on part 2. And before we head into his actual presidency in part 3. And obviously part 4, we're going to end it with his life.
Yes.
So, that's it. That's our first behind the battles of the American Civil War. And boy, that's not bad. It'll be about an hour and 20. Guess it's not bad. Abraham Lincoln. That's his early life. Did some things.
Did some things. He sure did.
I guess the most craziest thing that stuck out to me is the dude was involved in a duel that nobody ever talks about.
Right. And he was smart enough to use a sword instead of a gun.
Right, because he knew the guy would blow his brains out. So,
do we have to have a weapon? Yes.
Right. Can we just fist fight?
No.
Yeah, we'll be looking at his campaign for presidency on the next episode. And that's where we'll be. This is it. We're starting off the year 2025 with a bang.
Bang.
Battles of the American Civil War. Where are the Mouth of Michiganders?
We're starting the year 2025 off with the bang and dang. Bang dang.
Live from the Obedient Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Hi, welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War. Behind the Battles, Part 2, Abraham Lincoln.
Part 2.
Part 1 was all about his early years growing up and getting into lawyerism.
Getting to duels.
And getting into duels and, well, a duel. And his first foray into politics. And that's where, yeah, we're going to pick up in the 1850s. The talk of slavery is picking up. We already know.
It's already abolished for new slaves.
Old Abe's opposed to the spread of slavery, which
Past the old Mississippi.
a lot of these Northerners are, but he's got a foe that's about to be coming upon him, as in Stephen A. Douglas is going to be his political rival for the next decade or so before his actual rise to presidency. We're going to take a look at the 50s through up until the election of 1860 before next week's episode, where we'll take a look at his actual presidency, which obviously covers the Civil War. We're not going to get too in depth on the Civil War stuff because obviously we just did 200 and something or 200 episodes on the Civil War. So,
Right.
yeah, like I said, the debate over the status of slavery in the territories exacerbated sectional tensions between the slave-hoven South and the North, and the Compromise of 1850 failed to diffuse the issue.
Sure did. There wasn't even a compromise. I don't even know what they called it.
Package of 5 separate bills passed by the United States Congress in September 1850 that temporarily diffused tensions. Oh, you lied. Centered on how to handle slavery in recently acquired territories.
Yeah.
Approved California's request to enter the Union as a free state. Strengthened fugitive slave laws with the Fugitive Slave Act. Right. And then all that stuff. Basically.
Planned slave trade in Washington, D.C., while still allowing slavery itself there. Yeah. You just can't trade them anymore. Just what you have is what you got until they run out.
Or you can bring them.
No, you can't even bring them across the ocean anymore.
No, but you can bring them from
Right.
other
From
territories. You
inside
just
the
can't
country.
slave trade.
Right.
Well, they defined the northern and western borders for Texas while establishing a territorial government for the territory of New Mexico with no restrictions on whether any future state from this territory would be free or slave territory.
Damn, Texas was, Oklahoma was part of Texas?
It was way up there, man.
Look at that shit.
And they also established a territorial government for the territory of Utah with no restrictions on whether it would be free or a slave state. So basically,
that tells you right there that,
they didn't know what the hell they were doing, first of all.
right, and the North didn't give two shits about slavery. Because if they did, all those would have been slave-free states.
I think it was just a not even, I guess, a compromise.
Right.
But what did it do? Didn't anything. The South got the better end of the stick there,
Look like it.
or whoever's going to occupy that territory.
Yeah.
But in the early 1850s, Lincoln supported efforts for sectional mediation, and his 1852 eulogy for Henry Clay focused on the latter's support for gradual emancipation and opposition to both extremes on the slavery issue.
Yeah.
So can't sell them, but we can't ban them, basically.
Right, we're going to weed them out.
As the 1850s progressed, the debate over slavery in the Nebraska Territory and Kansas Territory became a particularly acrimonious, and Senator Stephen Douglas of Illinois proposed popular sovereignty as a compromise measure.
Oh.
The proposal would take the issue of slavery out of the hands of Congress by allowing the electorate of each territory to decide what they want to do.
Which they should have done in the first place, I guess. I mean, not really. I guess slavery should be like a main thing.
Yeah, it probably should be a federal issue.
Right, I'd say it's a world issue.
Right.
The proposal alarmed many Northerners who hoped to stop the spread of slavery into territories.
Stop the spread.
Despite this Northern opposition, Douglas's Kansas-Nebraska Act narrowly passed through Congress in May of 1854.
Let me guess. It said that they can do what they want, basically.
Right. For months after its passage, Old Abe did not publicly comment on the Kansas-Nebraska Act, but he came to strongly oppose it. 16th October, 1854. In his Peoria speech, Lincoln declared his opposition to slavery, which he repeated en route to the presidency. Speaking in his Kentucky accent with a very powerful voice, he said the Kansas Act had a declared indifference, but as I must think, A covert real zeal for the spread of slavery. I cannot but hate it. I hate it because of the monstrous injustice of slavery itself. I hate it because it deprives our Republican example of its just influence in the world. Lincoln's attack on the Kansas-Nebraska Act marked his return to political life. And Brown back, he's like, oh shit, look at me. Nationally, the Whigs were irreparably split by the Kansas-Nebraska Act.
It was like we said before, they have the new guard and the old guard. It's kind of like the mafia, the mustache Pete's versus the new guys.
Exactly. And other efforts to compromise on slavery issues as well. They were not even seen eye to
Cannot
eye.
come together on that.
Reflecting the demise of his party, Lincoln would write in 1855, I think I'm a Whig, but others say there are no Whigs, and that I am an abolitionist. I do no more than oppose the extension of slavery.
The extension of slavery, not the abolition of
right.
slavery.
Yeah, that's what I always thought.
Drawn on the anti-slavery portion of the Whig Party and combining Free Soil, Liberty, and anti-slavery Democratic Party members, the new Republican Party formed as a Northern party dedicated to anti-slavery.
Look at that shit.
Lincoln resisted early attempts to recruit him to the new party, fearing that it would serve as a platform for extreme abolitionists.
It did.
Yeah. Lincoln also hoped to rejuvenate the ailing Whig Party, though he bemoaned his party's growing closeness with the nativist Know Nothing movement. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Dude, there's so many right now.
Right.
Well, back in this day, at all the 1700s throughout early 1900s, there's so many freaking parties that were like big parties.
The Whigs. Yeah, the Whigs.
There wasn't just two party. It wasn't just a two-party thing.
No.
Like, literally.
It's insane. And then you got this Republican Party that nobody knows anything about. All they know is they don't want
They don't want slaves.
slaves.
Pretty much.
Crazy that it all worked out.
Well,
Kind of. 1854 elections. Lincoln elected to Illinois legislator, but declined to take his seat. In the aftermath of the elections, which showed the power and popularity of the movement opposed to the Kansas and Nebraska Act, Lincoln, he said, you know what? I'm going to go to the United States Senate. I don't want that legislator seat in Illinois anymore. I want to go to D.C.
well, we already know that he wants to further his political career, so of course he's going to go to the Senate.
Right. At that very time, senators were elected by the state legislator.
When's the last time has anybody been president with just being a House representative? Doubtful.
After leading in the first 6 rounds of voting, but unable to obtain a majority, Lincoln instructed his backers to vote for Lyman Trumbull. He's like, all right, if you guys ain't gonna if I don't get enough votes, this guy's got to go.
Well, he was an anti-slavery Democrat and had received few votes in the earlier ballots. His supporters, also anti-slavery Democrats, had vowed not to support any Whig.
Oh,
Lincoln's decision to withdraw enabled his Whig supporters and Trumbull's anti-slavery Democrats to combine forces and defeat the mainstream Democratic candidate Joel Aldrich Madison, in part due to the ongoing violent political confrontations in the Kansas. Opposition to the Kansas-Nebraska Act remained strong in Illinois and throughout the North.
Yeah.
Well, of course it would.
all right. As the 1856 elections approached, Abe abandoned the defunct Whig Party in favor for the Republicans. He attended the May of 1856 Bloomington Convention, which formally established the Illinois Republican Party. The convention platform asserted that Congress had the right to regulate slavery in the territories and called for the immediate admission of Kansas as a free state once and for all. Just do it. Lincoln gave the final speech of the convention, in which he endorsed the party platform and called for the preservation of the Union, because we must keep the Union together.
At the June 1856 Republican National Convention, Lincoln received significant support on the vice presidential ballot, though the party nominated a ticket of John C. Fremont and William Dayton. Lincoln strongly supported the Republican ticket, campaigning for the party throughout Illinois. Democrats nominated former Ambassador James Buchanan, who had been out of the country since 1853 and thus had avoided the debate over slavery in the territories.
Oh, shit.
While the Know Nothings nominated former Whig President Millard Fillmore.
Right.
In the 56 elections, Buchanan defeated both his challengers, but Fremont won several northern states. And Republican William Henry Bissell, he won election as governor of Illinois.
Wow.
Though Lincoln did not himself win office, his vigorous campaigning had made him the leading Republican in Illinois. And they said, boys, guess who we're running in 1860, baby?
Eric Foner contrasts the abolitionists and anti-slavery radical Republicans of the Northeast who saw slavery as a sin with the conservative Republicans who thought it was bad because it hurt white people and blocked progress. He said that in 2010. Foner argues that Lincoln was a moderate in the middle, opposing slavery primarily because it violated Republican principles of the Founding Fathers, especially the equality of all men and the democratic self-government as expressed in the Declaration of Independence.
March 1857, the Supreme Court issued its decision in Dred Scott versus Sanford. The opinion by Chief Justice Roger Taney held that blacks were not citizens and derived no rights from the Constitution.
Oh, wow.
While many Democrats hoped that Dred Scott would end the dispute over slavery in the territories, the decision sparked further outrage in the North.
Sure in hell did.
Lincoln denounced the decision, alleging it was the product of a conspiracy of Democrats to support the slave power.
Makes sense.
That's crazy that the Supreme Court even was like, nah, these people aren't people.
No, right.
That's crazy.
Lincoln argued the authors of the Declaration of Independence never intended to say all were equal in color, size, intellect, moral developments, or social capacity. But they did consider all men created equal in certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So even Lincoln's saying, well, we're not equal in color and size and intellect. We might be smarter and
Some may be more rich, some are poor, some are this, some are that.
Right.
But guess what? We all have the right to live
exactly
free
free.
or die young. Douglas was up for re-election in 1858. That's Stephen Douglas. And Lincoln hoped to defeat the powerful Illinois Democrat, with the former Democrat Trumbull now serving as Republican senator.
Oh, wow.
Many in the party felt that a former Whig should be nominated in 1858. In Lincoln's 1856 campaigning and willingness to support Trumbull in 1854, he earned him the favor in the party.
Damn right it did.
Some Eastern Republicans favored the re-election of Douglas for the Senate in 1858, since he had led the opposition to the Lecompton Constitution, which would have admitted Kansas as a slave state.
Oh. But many Illinois Republicans resented this Eastern interference. There it is. For the very first time, Illinois Republicans held a convention to agree upon a Senate candidate. And old Abe, he won the party's Senate nomination with little opposition. Accepting the nomination, Lincoln delivered his House divided speech. He focused on Mark 3, verse 25 of the King James Bible. He says, "A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other."
It can't be both. The speech created an evocative image of the danger of disunion caused by the slavery debate,
Right.
and rallied Republicans across the North. The stage was then set for the campaign for statewide election of the Illinois legislature, which would in turn select either Lincoln or Douglas as its senator.
Right.
On being informed of Lincoln's nomination, Douglas stated, "He is the strong man of the party, and if I beat him, my victory will be hardly won."
Ooh, good for him, man. The Senate campaign featured the 7 Lincoln-Douglas debates of 1858.
Yeah, those are famous.
The most famous political debates in American history.
Yeah, you know what? Every single one of those debates was like 4 hours long. It's
crazy.
Freaking retarded.
The principles stood in stark contrast, both physically and politically. Lincoln warned that the slave power was threatening the values of republicanism and accused Douglas of distorting the values of the founding fathers that all men are created equal, while Douglas emphasized his Freeport doctrine that local settlers were free to choose whether to allow slavery or not, and accused Lincoln of having joined the abolitionists.
Oh. And that's one thing Lincoln doesn't want to be seen
Well,
as.
this is the thing here. People didn't want the government to get in all into shit. That's why they
They want to govern themselves.
Right.
States.
That's yeah.
States' rights.
But with the issue of owning human beings, I'm sorry, there's got to be a higher power. There can't go with the states on that.
Oh, wow. That's a 180 turn from what you said on our very first episode of Battles of the American Civil
No.
War, when you said every state should have the power to do what they want.
Yes, every state should have the power, but except for owning human beings.
That's not what you said on our first episode.
It's totally different than owning human
Just
beings.
saying, you maybe doing this podcast
No.
and change your views a little bit.
I've always
because-
thought that.
No.
Yeah. I never said that the government shouldn't have to say if
Yes.
they're slaves or not.
Sure did.
No.
Yep. He said let the states decide what they want.
Yeah, but not about humans.
No, we were talking about slaves. No, obviously.
Oh, I said what they just did with the compromise. You got what you got, but no new shit.
You get what you get, don't throw a fit.
Right. But the problem was this: what everybody didn't want the government to make decisions for, because at that time they didn't see themselves. They did as a country, but not really, man. When it takes 15 hours to go 3 miles, you feel like you're
Well, states were way more independent then.
Right.
There's a reason why Lee chose to side with Virginia.
right. He wasn't siding with Confederate states.
If Virginia was in the North or
He would've-
didn't secede, he would have been with the North.
Yes, that's exactly what he said. He's like, hey, I'm fighting for Virginia. I'm not fighting for
This is my motherland.
I'm not fighting for the Confederate States. I'm not fighting for the Union. I'm fighting for Virginia.
Right. Well, these debates had an atmosphere of a prize fight and drew crowds in the thousands.
Ooh, prize fight.
Oh, geez. Made it Donald Trump back then.
Right.
Had the biggest crowds ever.
My biggest crowd.
Douglas, he never seen crowds like this till I came. Lincoln, he stated Douglas's popular sovereignty theory was a threat to the nation's morality, and that Douglas represented a conspiracy to extend slavery to free states.
Ooh,
Douglas, he says Lincoln was defying the authority of the U.S. Supreme Court and the Dred Scott decision, which, if you remember, just last episode, Lincoln said, if the law is the law, you must follow it, but now he doesn't want to do it.
No.
Although the Republican legislative candidates won more popular votes, the Democrats won more seats, and the legislature reelected Douglas to the Senate.
Sure in hell did.
Despite the bitterness of the defeat for Lincoln, his articulation of the issues gave him a national political reputation.
Right. Who's this guy?
He was already well known in Illinois and the likes,
Right.
but now he's everywhere.
May 1859. Lincoln purchased the Illinois Staatsanzeiger, a German language newspaper, which was consistently supportive. Most of the state's 130,000 German Americans voted Democrat, but there was Republican support that the German language paper could mobilize.
Oh, look at him purchasing the whole newspaper to get his
Right.
bias across.
In the very aftermath of the 1858 elections, newspapers frequently mentioned Lincoln as a potential Republican presidential candidate in 1860. They also mentioned William Seward, Salmon Chase, Edward Bates, and Simon Cameron looming as rivals for the nomination against Lincoln. Oh, boy.
While Lincoln was popular in the Midwest, he lacked support in the Northeast
Yeah.
and was unsure as to whether he should seek the presidency.
Right.
January 1860, Lincoln told a group of political allies that he would accept the nomination if offered, and in the following month, several local newspapers endorsed Lincoln for the president.
Oh, shit.
February 27th, 1860, New York party leaders invited Lincoln to give a speech at Cooper Union to a group of powerful Republicans.
I mean, if you're going to be a presidential candidate, you better come to New York and
yeah.
put your face in front of all these stupid people.
East Coast, obviously. I mean,
Right.
that's where the country is, basically.
Yeah.
Lincoln argued that the founding fathers had little use for popular sovereignty and had repeatedly sought to restrict slavery.
They have. That's true.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Every single founding father had about 50 slaves working on their farms.
Right. But they didn't want it to expand it
Well,
either.
that's a lie because it was still sold and thriving in the 1700s.
Sure no was. Lincoln, I know, even the British fucking abolished it first.
They were the first ones in the world.
Lincoln insisted that the moral foundation of the Republicans required opposition to slavery, rejected any groping for some middle ground between the right and the wrong. Despite his inelegant appearance, many in the audience thought him awkward and even ugly. Lincoln demonstrated an intellectual leadership that brought him into the front ranks of the party and into contention for the Republican presidential nomination.
Wasn't
Look at
aware.
that awkward, ugly son of a
Wasn't
bitch.
aware you had to be a 10-piece to be running for president.
You ain't getting a dime. Journalist Noah Brooks reported, no man ever before made such an impression on his first appeal to a New York audience.
I don't know why they would be speaking Southern when he's clearly New York, probably. Historian Donald.
Oh, shit.
The Donald guy. The three-named Donald guy.
Right.
He described the speech as a superb political move for an unannounced candidate to appear in one rival's,
That's a
who was
Seward.
Seward's own state, at an event sponsored by the second rival, who was Chase, his loyalist.
Oh, shit.
While not mentioning either by name during his delivery.
Hey, that's why you do it.
In response to an inquiry about his presidential intentions, Lincoln said, "The taste is in my mouth a little."
There's a little.
It's in my mouth a little. I got it. You taste that? You see that, Craig? You can get that down there.
Taste it. Come on.
That tastes fresh.
The Republican National Convention met in mid-May 1860 after the Democrats had forced to adjourn their convention in Charleston. Oh, well. With the Democrats in disarray and a sweep of the northern states possible, the Republicans felt confident going into their convention in Chicago. William Seward from New York, considered frontrunner,
Seward, man.
followed by Salmon Chase from Ohio, and then Missouri's Edward Bates. Lincoln from Illinois was lesser known and was not considered to even have a good chance against Seward.
Well, Seward had been governor and senator of New York and was an able politician with a Whig background. Also running were John Fremont, William Dayton, Cassius Clay, and Benjamin Wade, who might be able to win if the convention deadlocked. As the convention developed, however, it was revealed that frontrunners Seward, Chase, and Bates had each alienated factions of the Republican Party.
Oh,
Seward had been painted as a radical, and his speeches on slavery predicted inevitable conflict,
Right.
which spooked moderate delegates.
Yeah.
He also was firmly opposed to nativism, which further weakened his position.
Ooh.
He had also been abandoned by his longtime friend and political ally Horace Greeley, who was publisher of their influential New York Tribune.
Oh.
Yeah, you got to have a big newspaper guy behind you.
Yeah,
man.
you lose that, you lose everything. Chase, he's a former Democrat, had alienated many of the former Whigs by his coalition with the Democrats in the late 1840s. And he's like, that was freaking 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
He had also opposed tariffs demanded by Pennsylvania and even had opposition from his own delegation from Ohio.
Oh, wow.
However, Chase's firm anti-slavery stance made him popular with the radical Republicans. But what he offered in policy, he lacked in charisma and political acumen. Yeah, can't have that. Gotta have charisma.
Meanwhile, the conservative Bates was an unlikely candidate, but found support from Horace Greeley, who saw any chance to defeat Seward, with whom he now had a bitter feud.
Uh-oh.
Bates outlined his positions on the extension of slavery into the territories and equal constitutional rights for all citizens.
For all.
Positions that alienated his supporters in the border states of Southern conservatives.
Yeah, you're gonna have trouble everywhere.
And Southern conservatives. While German Americans in the party opposed Bates because of his past association with the Know Nothings, into this mix, Abraham Lincoln comes rising from the political ashes.
who fails to even say exactly what he opposes and what he doesn't.
That's not true. We know he opposes slavery and the extension of slavery.
That's it. Not the abolition,
Oh, yeah,
not the abolitionist of it. No.
Fine.
After the Cooper Union speech, Lincoln was in much demand for speaking engagements. As the convention approached, Lincoln did not campaign actively, as the office was expected to seek the man. Oh,
See, this is what Lincoln did early on in his career.
Right.
Whenever he was losing, he just gave it up anyways.
he did.
You know,
So it did at the Illinois State Convention a week before the National Convention. Yep.
meaning they seek the man. They
Right.
wanted the man.
Young politician Richard Oglesby found several fence rails that Lincoln may have split as a youngster and paraded them into the convention with a banner that proclaimed Lincoln to be the rail candidate for president. Lincoln received a thunderous ovation, surpassing his and his political allies' expectations. Oh, wow.
So he's a man of hard work.
I guess.
Put in his time working on the fields and putting up fences.
Yeah, sure.
Lincoln's campaign managers had printed and distributed thousands of fake convention admission tickets to Lincoln supporters to ensure and increase the crowd support. Oh, geez.
Oh, wow.
Even with such support from his home state, Lincoln faced a difficult task if he was to win the nomination.
You ain't kidding.
He set about ensuring that he was the second choice of most delegates, realizing that the first round of voting at the convention was unlikely to produce a clear winner. He engineered that the convention would happen in Chicago, which would be obviously friendly to Lincoln since he's an Illinois guy.
Right.
Look at this guy. I mean, if you want to do it, you got to play the political game.
Yeah. Well, Lincoln also made sure that the Illinois delegation would vote as a block for him. Lincoln did not attend the convention in person. And he left the task of delegate wrangling to several close friends. The first round voting predictably produced a lead for Seward, but not a majority. Lincoln in second place.
Oh, well.
Second round eliminated most of the minor contenders, with voters switching mostly to Seward or Lincoln. The convention remained deadlocked. Skillful political maneuvering by Lincoln's delegate wranglers convinced some delegates to abandon Seward in favor of Lincoln, but how many?
Lincoln's combination of a moderate stance on slavery, long support for economic issues, his Western origins, and strong oratory, he proved to be exactly what the delegates wanted in a president.
Damn right.
On the third ballot, May 18th, Lincoln secured the nomination overwhelmingly.
Look at that.
Senator Hannibal Hamlin from Maine was nominated for vice president, defeating Clay. Hamlin, he was surprised by his nomination, saying he was astonished and that he neither expected nor desired it.
Oh.
Which is even more crazy, yeah, because he was the first vice president. Johnson didn't even come in until the second election.
Right.
And within 2 months, he's president.
And this is what I like as well, because back then they voted for both.
Right. Right. You frequently had
Republican
members of either party.
Right. That was fantastic. Party platform promised not to interfere with slavery in the states, but oppose slavery in the territories. The platform promised tariffs protecting industry and workers, a Homestead Act granting free farmland in the West to settlers, and the funding of a transcontinental railroad.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, that's everything everybody ever wanted, besides the slavery stuff. There's no mention of Mormonism, which had been condemned in the party's 1856 platform. Yeah, and everybody was fleeing from Pennsylvania and was it Boston?
Chicago and all that.
All
yeah.
that. And there's no mention of the Fugitive Slave Act. There was no mention of the personal liberty laws or even the Dred Scott decision.
Stay away from all that.
Yeah. While the Seward forces were disappointed at the nomination of a little-known Western upstart guy, they rallied behind Lincoln anyway. while abolitionists were angry at the selection of a moderate and had little faith in old Abe.
Well, moving on to the actual election, we had the Northern Democrat, and their candidates were Stephen Douglas, James Guthrie, who was former Treasury Secretary from Kentucky, Robert Mercer Taliaferro Hunter, senator from Virginia, Joseph Lane, a senator from Oregon, Daniel Dickinson, former senator from New York, Andrew Johnson, the old Tennessee Howell Cobb, who was Treasury Secretary from Georgia, probably related to the other races. Well, at the Democratic National Convention held in Institute Hall, Charleston, South Carolina, April 1860, 50 Southern Democrats walked out over a platform dispute led by the extreme pro-slavery fire eater William Lowndes Yancey and the Alabama delegation. Following them were the entire delegations of Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas. 3 of the 4 delegates from Arkansas, and 1 of the 3 from Delaware.
Oh, wow.
Damn, Democrats got some strife going on here, huh?
Holy shit. Douglas, a moderate on the slavery issue who favored popular sovereignty, was ahead on the first ballot, but was 56.5 votes short of securing the nomination.
Damn.
On the 57th ballot, with Douglas still ahead, but 51.5 votes, it's going down. The exhausted and desperate delegates agreed on the 3rd of May to cease voting and adjourn the convention.
Said we're not getting nowhere.
While some consider Horatio Seymour a compromise candidate for the National Democratic nomination at the reconvening convention in Baltimore, Seymour wrote a letter to the editor of his local newspaper declaring unreservedly that he was not a candidate for either spot on the ticket. I don't know what
He said, I don't want nothing to do with
I
it.
don't know what you guys are trying to do, but no. After 2 ballots, the 59th ballot overall, the remaining Democrats nominated Stephen A. Douglas from Illinois for president. It's the Battle of the Illinois, the fight in Illinois. The election would now pit Lincoln against his longtime political rival, whom Lincoln had lost to in the Illinois Senate race just 2 years earlier. That's a hell of a Cinderella story.
Well, the two candidates were from Illinois showed the importance of the West in the election. While Benjamin Fitzpatrick from Alabama was nominated for vice president, he refused the nomination.
Wow.
After the convention concluded with no vice presidential nominee, Douglas offered the vice presidential nomination to Herschel Johnson from Georgia, and he's like, yeah, damn right, I'm accepting.
Southern Democrat candidates, John C. Breckinridge, Vice President of the United States.
Well, we know what he goes on to do.
Yep. Daniel S. Dickinson, former senator.
Damn, so he was in the northern. He said, I'll try my luck with damn, Jefferson. Oh, Jefferson Davis, yeah.
Robert Mercer Taliaferro Hunter.
Damn, him
senator
again.
From Virginia. Joseph Lane, senator from Oregon.
Jeez.
Jefferson Davis, senator from Mississippi.
Yeah, those were the ones that walked out.
Right. The delegates who walked out of the convention. When the convention seated 2 replacement delegates on June 18th, they walked out again.
Yeah.
Or they boycotted the convention. Accompanied by nearly all other Southerner delegates and erstwhile convention chair Caleb Cushing, a New Englander and former member of Franklin Pierce's cabinet. This larger group met immediately in Baltimore's Institute Hall with Cushing again presiding. They adopted the pro-slavery platform rejected at Charleston and nominated Vice President John Breckinridge for president and Senator Joseph Lane for vice president. All right.
Yancey and some of the bolters, the guys that walked out,
right,
they almost entirely from the lower South, met June 28th in Richmond, along with the South Carolina and Florida delegations that happened at a convention that affirmed the nominations of Breckinridge and Lane.
There we go. Started madness. Besides the Democratic parties in the southern states, the Breckinridge-Lane ticket was also supported by the Buchanan administration.
Oh.
Buchanan's own continued prestige in his home state of Pennsylvania ensured that Breckinridge would be the principal Democratic candidate in that populous state. Breckinridge was the last sitting vice president nominated for president until Richard Nixon in 1960. Oh, shit.
Well, meanwhile, we got the Constitutional Union.
Oh, I like that.
Their candidates were John Bell, former senator from Tennessee, Sam Houston, which we know was like started Texas basically,
right.
John Crittenden, senator from Kentucky, Edward Everett, former senator from Massachusetts, William Graham, former senator from North Carolina, and William Rives, who was a former senator from Virginia.
Okay.
Well, that party was formed by remnants of the now defunct Know Nothing and Whig parties. Oh, they're like, where do we go?
Right.
They were unwilling to join either the Republicans or the Democrats.
Right.
The new party's members hoped to stave off Southern secession by avoiding the slavery issue altogether.
Oh.
They met in the East Side District Courthouse of Baltimore and nominated John Bell from Tennessee for president and over Governor Sam Houston of Texas on the second ballot. Edward Everett He was nominated for vice president at the convention May 9th, 1 week before Lincoln was.
John Bell, he's a former Whig who had opposed the Kansas-Nebraska Act and the Lecompton Constitution. Edward Everett had been president of Harvard University and Secretary of State in the Millard Fillmore administration. Oh, so this guy got some...
Well, he's going for vice president, huh?
Well, the party platform advocated compromise to save the Union with the slogan, "The Union as it is and the Constitution as it is."
Okay.
They just didn't want change.
Right. Well, then we had the Liberty Union candidates. Garrett Smith, who was a former representative from New York. By 1860, a very little remained of the Liberty Party after most of its membership left to join the Free Soil Party in 1848, and nearly all of what remained of it joined the Republicans in 1854. The remaining party was also called the Radical Abolitionists. Oh, well, we know their guys.
Oh, wow.
A convention of 100 delegates was held in Convention Hall, Syracuse, New York, August 29, 1860. Delegates were in attendance from New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, and Massachusetts.
Oh.
Several of the delegates were women.
Look at that.
Jeez. We know what this party is.
Garrett Smith, prominent abolitionist and 1848 presidential nominee of the original Liberty Party. He sent a letter in which he stated that his health had been so poor that he had not been able to be away from home since 1858. And you guys want this to be president? Nonetheless, he remained popular in the party because he had helped inspire some of John Brown's supporters at the raid on Harper's Ferry. Well, that's cool. In his letter, Smith donated $50 to pay for the printing of ballots in the various states.
All right. Well, there was quite a spirited contest between the friends of Garrett Smith and William Goodell in regard to the nomination for the presidency.
Oh.
In spite of his professed ill health, Garrett Smith was nominated for president, and Samuel McFarland from Pennsylvania was for VP.
Oh.
Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana, all slates of presidential electors pledged to Smith, and McFarland ran with the name of the Union Party.
Damn.
Okay, they received a total of 176 votes in the general election, which was 0.004% of the total.
Good job, guys. Let's go on to the People's Party. Who are these guys? Well, the People's Party is a loose association of the supporters of Governor Samuel Houston.
Dude, how are these people on multiple tickets?
Right. April 20th, 1860, the party held what it termed a national convention to nominate Houston for president on the San Jacinto battlefield in Texas. Houston's supporters at the gathering did not nominate a vice president since they expected later gatherings to carry out that function. Later, mass meetings were held in northern cities, such as New York on the 30th of May, 1860, but they failed to even nominate a vice presidential candidate again. Houston, he never was even enthusiastic about running for president. Soon became convinced that he had no chance of winning. And he thought this guy had 176 votes. Well, I guess he don't know that yet.
Right.
He had no chance of winning, that his candidacy would only make it easier for the Republican candidate to win. He withdrew from the race on the 16th of August and urged the formation of a unified Union ticket in opposition to Lincoln.
Well, in their campaigning, Bell and Douglas both claimed that this union would not necessarily follow a Lincoln election.
Oh.
Nonetheless, loyal Army officers in Virginia, Kansas, and South Carolina warned Lincoln of military preparations to the contrary.
Oh.
Secessionists threw their support behind Breckinridge in an attempt to either to force the anti-Republican candidates to coordinate their electoral votes or to throw the election into the House of Representatives, where the selection of the president would be made by the representatives elected in 1858,
Wow.
which is before the Republican majorities in both House and Senate achieved in 1860 were seated.
Oh.
So they're like, well, you got to get it through the House because we got all Democrats there and we'll push it through for the guy.
Okay, here we go here. Mexican war hero Winfield Scott suggested to Lincoln that he assume the powers of commander-in-chief before inauguration. Whoa. However, historian Bruce Chadwick observes that Lincoln and his advisor ignored the widespread alarms and threats of succession as mere election trickery. Yeah, they're like, they're never going to do anything. Indeed, voting in the South was not as monolithic as the Electoral College map would make it seem. Economically, culturally, politically, the South was made up of three regions. States of the Upper South, also known as the Border South, Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri. Unionist popular votes were scattered among Lincoln, Douglas, and Bell to form a majority in all four. So it's like...
In the four middle states, there was a Unionist majority divided between Douglas and Bell in Virginia and Tennessee. In North Carolina and Arkansas, the Unionists, which was Bell and Douglas, vote approached a majority.
Oh.
In 3 of the 7 Deep South states, Unionists, Bell and Douglas, won divided majorities in Georgia and Louisiana and neared it in Alabama.
Wow.
Breckinridge, he convincingly carried only 4 of the 7 states of the Deep South, which was South Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, and Texas.
Right.
Isn't he from North Carolina, or he's from Pennsylvania, and he still didn't even carry that?
Wow.
The Deep South states had, well, that's not Deep South, I guess. The Deep South states had the largest enslaved populations and consequently the smallest enfranchised free white populations.
Oh, wow.
Right. That's why he won those.
Right. Among the slave states, 3 states with the highest voter turnouts voted the most one-sided. Texas, with 5% of the total wartime South's population, voted 75% Breckinridge. Kentucky, Missouri, with 1/4 of the total population, voted 73% pro-Union, Bell, Douglas, and Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
In comparison, the other 6 states of the Deep South, made up of 1/4 of the Confederate voting population, spent 57% Breckinridge and 43% the other 2 pro-Union candidates. So, I mean, everybody thought it was like 90-10 and blah. No, it's actually pretty close. 57-43 is kind of a bit, but it's still pretty close.
More than what it would be like for, you would think it would be for the Deep South.
Right. The 4 states that were admitted to the Confederacy after Fort Sumter held almost half of its population, and they voted a narrow combined majority of 53% for the pro-Union candidates. Holy shit.
And the 11 states that would later declare their secession from the Union and be controlled by Confederate armies, ballots for Lincoln were cast only in Virginia, where he received 1,929 votes, which was 1.15% of the total.
Makes sense.
Unsurprisingly, the vast majority of the votes Lincoln received were cast in border counties of what would soon become West Virginia,
Right.
which the future state accounted for 1,832 of the 1,929 votes. Wow.
Oh.
Lincoln received no votes at all in 121 of the state's at the time 145 counties, which included 31 of the 50 that would form West Virginia. Oh, wow. He received a single vote in 3 counties and received 10 or fewer votes in 9 of the 24 counties where he polled votes.
Lincoln's best results by far were in the 4 counties that
This is
comprised
just the South, obviously.
Right. That comprised the state's northern panhandle, a region which had long felt alienated from Richmond, was economically and culturally linked to its neighbors Ohio and Pennsylvania. Yeah. And would become the key driver in a successful effort to form a separate state. Hancock County, Virginia's northernmost at the time, returned Lincoln's best result. Over 40% he polled there and finished in second place. Lincoln polled only 8 votes fewer than Breckinridge.
Of the 97 votes cast for Lincoln in the state's post-1863 boundaries, 93 were polled in 4 counties along with the Potomac River, and 4 were tallied in the coastal city of Portsmouth. One key difference between modern elections and those of the mid-19th century is that at the time the state did not print and distribute ballots. In theory, any document containing a valid or at least non-excessive number names of citizens of a particular state, provided they were eligible to vote in electoral college within that state, might have been accepted as a valid presidential ballot. However, what this meant in practice was that a candidate's campaign was responsible for printing and distributing their own ballots.
Wow.
This service was typically done by supportive newspaper publishers. Well, that's fucked.
That don't seem very,
Safe and secure, huh?
wow. Moreover, since voters did not choose the president directly, but rather presidential electors, the only way for a voter to meaningfully support a particular candidate for president was to cast a ballot for citizens of his state who would have pledged to vote for the candidates in the electoral college, which makes sense. In 10 southern slave states, no citizen would publicly pledge to vote for Abraham. So citizens had no legal means to vote for the Republican nominee.
Jeez.
No legal means, none at all.
Most of Virginia, no publisher would print ballots for Lincoln's pledge electors. While a citizen without access to a ballot for Lincoln could theoretically still have voted for him by means of a write-in, provided his state had electors pledged to Lincoln and the voter knew their identities.
Right.
Casting a ballot in favor of the Republican candidate in a strongly pro-slavery county would have incurred, at minimum, social ostracization.
All right.
On the other side, casting a vote for Breckinridge in a strongly abolitionist county ran the same risk.
Right. So you're like,
Obviously, so it's either, north or south. I mean, it's already north or south.
well, over with. In the 4 slave states that did not succeed, which was Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware, Lincoln came in 4th in every state except for Delaware. He finished 3rd. Within 15 slave states, Lincoln won only 2 counties out of 996. Missouri, St. Louis, and Gasconade counties. In 1856 election, the Republican candidate for president had received no votes at all in 12 of the 14 slave states with a popular vote.
Well, this election, held Tuesday, November 6, 1860, and was noteworthy for the exaggerated sectionalism and voter enthusiasm in a country that was soon to dissolve into civil war.
Yeah.
Voter turnout, 81.2%, the highest in American history up to that time, and the second highest overall, which exceeded only in the election of 1876. So it's still second overall ever. Since Andrew Jackson had one re-election in 1832, all 6 subsequent presidents had only won one term. Yeah.
Wow.
While the last 4 of those had won with a popular vote under 51%. Yeah, so there were some tight-ass races, too.
Oh, look at that.
You have a mirror? or what?
Country didn't know where it wanted to go. I'm like, oh, shit. Lincoln won the Electoral College with less than 40% of the popular vote. Wow. By carrying states above the Mason-Dixie line and north of the Ohio River. Plus the states of
Obviously,
California.
the north is the
Right.
industrialized where all the population is.
Plus he got the newly states of California and Oregon.
Oh, wasn't Oregon he was fair to go to a little while, a few years before, because it was a Democratic stronghold?
Yeah. Unlike every preceding president-elect, Lincoln did not even carry even one slave state. He instead carried all 18 free states exclusively.
Well, hey, whatever it took to get the job done, I guess.
There were not even ballots distributed for Lincoln in 10 of the southern slave states: Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas said no.
So then he would have won far greater.
Probably.
Put it that way.
Most likely.
Damn, 40% of the popular vote and still won, huh? All right. Oh, this withheld 61 potential electoral votes from Lincoln, right?
Right.
A fifth of what was the total of 303 available to other candidates. In a similar divide between North and South electors, Breckinridge carried 9 of the 10 slave states that withheld Lincoln from the ballot, with the exception being Tennessee.
Oh, Tennessee said no, Breckinridge.
Well, Lincoln was therefore the second president-elect to poll no votes in some states that had a popular vote. The first was John Quincy Adams, who polled no ballots in the popular votes of 2 states in the election of 1824.
Wow.
The only other election in which there were 4 major candidates,
Wow.
none of whom distributed ballots in every state.
Holy shit. How the hell did he win?
I would assume he was probably all northern shit too, man.
It also should be noted, prior to the introduction of the secret ballot in 1880s, the concept of ballot access did not even exist in the sense it does today. There was no standardized state-issued ballot for a candidate to appear on it. Instead, presidential ballots were printed and distributed by agents of the candidates, as we said before,
That's crazy.
who organized slates of would-be electors publicly pledged to vote for a particular candidate. Yeah.
Right.
Since 1860, excluding reconstructed southern states in 1868 and 1872, there have been 2 occasions where a Republican presidential candidate failed to even poll votes in every state, while national Democratic candidates have failed to appear on all state ballots in 3 elections since the introduction of the secret ballot, though in all 3, the Democratic candidate nonetheless won the presidency. But none of them were off the ballot, and in many states as Lincoln in 1860, though.
So what they're trying to say is Lincoln had a big ass disadvantage and he still
Right.
won. Well, Lincoln won the second lowest share of the popular vote among all winning presidential candidates in U.S. history.
Wow.
Lincoln's share of the popular vote would likely have been even lower had there been a popular vote in South Carolina.
Oh.
Though, conversely, it would likely have been marginally higher had he been on the ballot in all of the southern states, right?
Right.
The Republican victory resulted from the concentration of votes in the free states, which together controlled a majority of the presidential electors. Yes.
Obviously. Lincoln's strategy was deliberately focused, in collaboration with Republican Party Chairman Thurlow Weed, on expanding on the states Fremont won 4 years ago. New York was critical with 35 electoral college votes, 11.5% of the total. Pennsylvania had 27, and Ohio had 23 as well. A candidate could collect 85 votes, whereas 152 were required to win. Looking pretty good there just for those 3. The Wide Awakes, young Republican men's organization, massively expanded their registered voter list, and although Lincoln was not even on the ballot in most southern states, population increases in the free states had far exceeded those seen in the slave states for many years before the election of 1860.
That made up the difference there.
Right. Hence, free states dominated in the Electoral College.
Well, that Gasconade County, Missouri, they have voted Republican presidential candidate in every election from 1860 on, which, as of 2024, makes it the longest Republican winning streak in presidential elections in the nation.
Wow.
Man, look at you, Gasconade.
Cool.
The split in Democratic Party is sometimes held responsible for Lincoln's victory, obviously.
Right.
Even though Lincoln won the election with less than 40% of the popular vote, as much of the anti-Republican vote was wasted in southern states in which no ballots for Lincoln were circulated.
Right. Yes. Say that a million times.
Right. In the states of New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, where anti-Lincoln votes were combined into fusion tickets, Lincoln still won 2 and split New Jersey. Despite this, a shift of 25,000 votes to the fusion ticket in New York would have left Lincoln with 145 electoral votes, 7 votes short of winning the college, and force a contingent election of the House of Representatives.
Oh, Senior Duck.
Of the 5 states that Lincoln failed to carry despite polling votes, he received 20% of the vote in only one, which was Delaware, and 10% of the vote in only one more, which was Missouri.
Damn, he only got 20% of the vote in Delaware.
Delaware is a slave state.
Like Lincoln, Breckinridge and Bell won no electoral votes outside of their respective sections.
Of course,
Bell retired to his family business, quietly supporting his state's succession. Breckinridge served as a Confederate general, as we all know. He finished second in the Electoral College with 72 votes, carrying 11 of 15 slave states, including South Carolina, whose electors were chosen by a state legislator and not even a popular vote.
Oh, jeez.
Breckinridge stood at a distant third in national popular vote at 18%, but accrued 50 to 75% in the first 7 states that would form the Confederate States of America. Highly recognized dude there, huh?
He took 9 of the 11 states that eventually joined, plus the border slave states of Delaware and Maryland.
Makes sense.
Losing only Virginia and Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
Breckinridge received very little support in the free states, showing some strength in only California, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut.
They probably just liked his name.
Right.
I don't know.
Bell, he carried 3 slave states, which were Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia. And then he lost Maryland by only 722 votes.
Well, that's a lot.
Nevertheless, he finished a remarkable second in all slave states won by Breckinridge or Douglas.
Well, look at that.
Look at that.
Good for him. He also won 45 to 47% in Maryland, Tennessee, and North Carolina, and canvassed respectively with 36 to 40% in Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Georgia, and Florida. That's pretty cool. Bell himself had hoped that he would take over the former support of the extinct Whig Party in free states, but the majority of this support went to Lincoln. Thus, except for running May Everett's home state of Massachusetts and California, Bell received even less support in the free states than Breckinridge, and consequently came in last place in the national vote at 12.6%.
Douglas, he was the only candidate who won electoral votes in both slave and free states.
Look at that.
Which he won in free New Jersey and slave state Missouri.
Fantastic.
His support was the most widespread geographically. He finished second behind Lincoln in the popular vote with 29.5%, but last in the Electoral College.
Oh, wow.
His 12 electoral votes are the lowest for a Democrat in history. Douglas attained a 28 to 47% share in the states of the Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, and Trans-Mississippi West, but slipped to 19 to 39% in New England. Outside his regional section, Douglas took 15 to 17% of the popular vote total in the slave states of Kentucky, Alabama, and Louisiana, then 10% or less in the 9 remaining states.
Okay.
Douglas and his Norfolk Doctrine, reiterated in North Carolina, promised to keep the Union together by coercion if states proceeded to secede. The popular vote for Lincoln and Douglas combined was 69.1% of the turnout.
Oh, beautiful.
So people didn't want to secede, apparently.
Well, all right. That wasn't the plan. The 1816 Republican ticket was his first successful national ticket that did not feature a Southerner. And the election marked the end of Southern political dominance in the United States of America.
All for a Southerner to become president after Lincoln got assassinated.
Right. Between 1879 and 1860, Southerners had been president for 2/3 of the era and held the offices of Speaker of the House, President pro tempore of the Senate, during much of that time. Moreover, since 1791, Southerners had comprised a majority of the Supreme Court as well.
Yep. Well, we all know Lincoln's victory and imminent inauguration as president was the immediate cause for declarations of secession by 7 southern states, South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas, from December to February.
Right.
They then formed the Confederate States of America. 9th of February, 1861, Jefferson Davis was elected that first president.
Damn, that quick, dude.
Several other states also considered declaring secession at this time. Missouri, Arkansas, Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina. They all had referendums, but they failed.
Right.
But they would go.
Yeah, they would. All of the secessionist activity was motivated by fear for the institution of slavery in the South. If the president opposed slavery, it might collapse. There were fears that the abolitionist agents would infiltrate the South and foment slave insurrections. The noted secessionist William Lowndes Yancey, speaking at New York's Cooper's Institute, 1860 in October, asserted that the abolitionists in power, emissaries will percolate between master and slave as water between the crevices of rocks underground. Wow. They will be found everywhere with strychnine to put in our wells. Or strychnine?
Sure.
Less radical Southerners thought that with Northern anti-slavery dominance of the federal government, slavery would eventually be abolished, regardless of present constitutional limits. They're like, it's going to end sooner or later. You got to go.
Well, Bertram Wyatt Brown argues that secessionists desired independence as necessary for their honor. They could no longer tolerate Northern state attitudes that regarded slave ownership as a great sin and Northern politicians who insisted on stopping the spread of slavery. Another block of Southerners resented Northern criticism of slavery and restrictions on slavery, but opposed secession as dangerous and unnecessary. However, the conditional Unionists also hope that when faced with secession, Northerners would stifle anti-slavery rhetoric and accept pro-slavery rules for the territories.
They won't, though, guys. They're not backing down, and we won't back down. That's what Abe Lincoln's saying.
Right.
It was that group that prevented immediate succession in Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas when Lincoln took office on the 4th of March, 1861. He took no action against the secessionists in the 7 Confederate states, but also declared that secession had no legal validity and refused to surrender federal property in those states. They do have legal, because it says right in the Constitution.
Nope, got to be voted on.
It does have to be voted on. He also reiterated his opposition to slavery anywhere in the territories. Preparing to form an army on the 6th of March, 1861, Confederate President Davis called for 100,000 volunteers to serve for 12 months.
The political standoff continued until mid-April when Davis ordered Confederate troops to go ahead and capture Fort Sumter.
Uh-oh.
Lincoln, he then called for troops to put down the rebellion, which wiped out the possibility that the crisis could be resolved by compromise.
Right.
Nearly all conditional Unionists joined the secessionists, including, for example, presidential candidate John Bell of the Constitutional Union Party, whose home state of Tennessee was the last to secede.
Ooh.
The Virginia Convention and the reconvened Arkansas Convention both declared secession, as did the legislatures of Tennessee, North Carolina. All 4 states then joined the Confederacy.
Look at that shit. It was like crazy instant. Missouri stayed in the U.S., but had an unrecognized dual government.
We all know that. Some shit happened in Missouri
Right.
Missouri during the war.
After the Civil War begun, Douglas then threw his support behind Lincoln and undertook a tour to bolster up support for the Union, making visits to Virginia, Ohio, and Illinois. Douglas declared, "There are no neutrals, only patriots and traitors." And Missouri's like, "What?"
Right.
Kentucky's like, "What?" Or was it Tennessee?
West Virginia's like, what?
Right. Well,
Delaware's like, what?
However, 3 months after Lincoln's inauguration, Douglas contracted,
That doggone typhoid fever, man. I swear.
Douglas got typhoid fever and died in Chicago on the 3rd of June, 1861. Damn. En route to his inauguration by train, Lincoln addressed crowds and legislators across the North. The president-elect then evaded possible assassins in Baltimore, who were uncovered by Lincoln's head of security, Allen Pinkerton.
Oh, the old Pinkertons.
On February 23rd, 1861, he arrived in disguise in Washington, D.C., which was placed under substantial military guard. Wow, that kind of sounds like crazy shit going on there, huh?
Yeah, well, Lincoln directed his inaugural address to the South, proclaiming once again that he had no intention or inclination to abolish slavery in the southern states. Apprehension seems to exist among the people of the southern states that by the accession of a Republican administration, their property and their peace and personal security are to be in danger.
All right, I just think
There has never been any reasonable cause for such apprehension. Indeed, the most ample evidence to the contrary has all the while existed and been open to their inspection. It is found in nearly all the published speeches of him who now addresses you. I do but quote from one of those speeches when I declare that I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists. I believe I have no lawful right to do so, and I have no inclination to do so.
Wow.
He said that on his first inaugural address.
Makes sense. It's not a surprise. Some people it is. They don't know
Nobody believed
history.
him.
Right. The president ended his address with an appeal to the people of the South. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, are all over this broad land. Will yet swell the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. They're like, bullshit! They're like, whoa! Eat crow! Well, I don't know. Did I say that? The failure of the Peace Conference of 1861.
Which we most likely will have an episode all about that.
Right. It signaled that legislative compromise was impossible.
Yeah, there's no talking it out, guys.
By March of 1861, no leaders of the insurrection had proposed rejoining the Union on any terms. Meanwhile, Lincoln and the Republican leadership agreed that the dismantling of the Union could not be tolerated.
Just as the war ended, we'll fast forward here a little bit, but he did say both parties deprecated war, but one of them would make war rather than let the nation survive, and the other would accept war rather than let it perish. And the war came.
Damn.
And that is where we leave off episode 2 before we get in, well, second part of Abraham Lincoln before we get into the third part, which is going to cover his presidency, which obviously only lasts through the war. And much of that will be talking about stuff that happened during the war, obviously, because what else is he doing?
Right.
And so we'll take a look at his presidency. Plus, we'll obviously have the same type of lead up that we just did to this election, but for the 1864 election, before we end it with our fourth part on Abraham Lincoln, which is obviously the assassination. So shit's getting hot. Oh, damn, dude. Lincoln.
Fucking Lincoln.
He kind of had like one of the biggest what if presidencies ever. You know, what would he have done if there wasn't a war? What would have happened?
Right.
Crazy.
Right.
Guess we'll never know.
Never know.
Never know. But that's it. We're looking at about an hour, probably. That's not bad. A little less, 20 minutes less than part one. So there you go. It's part two. Back to part three. Farting and parting and doing all that sorts of stuff on Civil War Behind the Battles. We'll see you next week. We are the Ministry Man.
Bang, bang.
Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Hey, welcome back to Behind the Battles of this American Civil War, part 3 of this Abraham Lincoln saga. We already took a look at his early life and his early political career. Last episode, we took a look at the 1860 election. And this one, we'll take a look at his presidency throughout, well, up until he died, obviously. And we'll take a look at his time. We'll go through the Civil War, kind of like I don't know, I guess it would be like a rundown of the Civil War, but we'll look at it. We'll have a lot of his decisions that we might not have talked about on the actual battles that we'll see. We'll talk about that, and then we'll get into the 1864 election, a little bit about that, and then we'll also talk about some of his foreign policies and just basically his presidency up until right before he's assassinated. And obviously we'll go into him getting assassinated next week. Yeah.
Happens.
He did a lot of the Republican parties falling apart. I should say by 1864, it's not even the Republican Party anymore. We'll give you a little spoiler about that. I always thought he was Republican, got re-elected as a Republican, but he didn't. As you know, we left off, obviously, with him getting elected, and then he boarded a special train to go to the Capitol over the next couple of weeks. He did like a little tour, I guess, and he spoke several times each day during the train trip. His speeches were mostly extemporaneous, which apparently means he Donald Trumped him. He didn't prepare him. It was off the cuff.
Cool.
His message was still consistent. He had no hostile intentions toward the South. Disunion was not acceptable, and he intended to enforce the laws and protect property.
Right.
While rumors abounded during the course of the trip of various plots to kill Lincoln, Samuel Felton, who was president of the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad, hired Detective Alan Pinkerton to investigate reports that secessionists might try to sabotage the railroad along the route. In conducting his investigation, Pinkerton obtained information that indicated to him that an